In the swamps of Vulver, a fierce battle rages. A squad of knights clashes with monstrous creatures resembling insects, their swords and spears striking against chitinous claws in a desperate fight. Around them chaos, the squad commander loudly orders reinforcements to support the other leaders on the battlefield, but a young dark-haired knight standing aside from the skirmish calmly says that this is unnecessary. The operation draws the attention of a woman, the first officer, who, surprised, turns to him. She asks him again, addressing him by the rank first officer. He simply gazes at the huge insect-like beast, hand on the sword hilt, and says that this creature is his prey. Another knight and the young man with light, tousled hair rushed into battle, effortlessly cutting the monster in half. The spectators recognized him as the famous sword Alta, the youngest knight of the kingdom. A memory arises. The dark-haired knight recalls his previous life, the world in which he lived before reincarnation. In that world, he was a man named South, who dedicated his entire life to the way of the sword. He reflects on that lonely life without family or friends. It was a path he walked alone, a life meant to end quietly, and it did end that way. 3 years have passed since that death. He was reborn in this world as Alta, to test new limits, traveled as a mercenary, fought in battles, and cut down every enemy until he earned the title of Sword Saint, an unparalleled master. Thanks to the enormous hidden magical gift he was born with, his skills almost returned to their former peak, and given a second chance, Alta set a simple goal for himself to make the most of his new life. Earn money and secure a comfortable retirement, and now he serves in the strict order of Black Knights in the kingdom of Geladia, the land of his new birth. He stood before his commander Lamur, who casually sat with her feet on the table and reported that the operation to destroy the abnormally reproducing demonic beasts was successful. The squad suffered several injuries but no casualties, and she praised him with a slight smile for the brilliant work. He eagerly asked if they would receive a bonus for each kill and openly named their total number 1,259. After clarifying his priorities, he solemnly stood by the door of her office and sincerely thanked her. Her curiosity piqued. Lamur noticed that money was already the second thing he mentioned. She leaned forward and asked inquisitively what he would spend it on. He replied that nothing special, just saving for something that would be useful in the future. His vague answer seemed to unsettle her. She lunged forward, grabbed his uniform, and demanded why such a young man did not speak of dreams and passion. Pressing and asking what exactly ignited his heart, surprised, he only replied that nothing special. He recoiled, his face became serious, and he understood inwardly. Holding the sword does not awaken a thirst for power in him. It is the same feeling from a previous life, which was called burnout, and he simply decided that nothing interested him, something he never told another sword. Shaking off heavy thoughts, his face blossomed into a broad, joyful smile. He said that he was still young and would just take everything slowly. His carefree behavior caused the commander to laugh sincerely, and she said she liked that about him. Standing before her, he thought that although she was a bit strict as a superior, it was pleasant to talk with her. Suddenly an idea struck her. She pointed at him and exclaimed that she had an idea. Suddenly inspired, she slid a document across the table and declared that as the first officer, Alta had the perfect mission for him. Taking the papers, he skimmed them and asked if his next task was to be a bodyguard. He looked closely at the sketch the commander handed him. On the paper was a young woman with delicate features, and Lemierre's voice explained that an unpleasant rumor was spreading, and until it was verified whether she was safe, he would accompany her. When he heard that the mission paid twice the usual amount, he eagerly agreed, sharply exclaiming, "Let's go!" And Lemierre warned that hiring the first officer based on a mere rumor was a sign that the matter would be far from simple. He pondered the idea of double pay for what seemed like a simple task. The commander said it was easy to get along with him, then added that she had already dealt with the security and it was time to act, and he replied briefly and clearly to himself, "Accepted." The assignment would send him to the higher core of the Fiora Academy, a grand, sprawling institution surrounded by tall stone walls. In the academy courtyard, the morning air was filled with friendly greetings from students, but the calm was suddenly broken by a boy who began shouting for everyone to clear the way. The crowd parted to let Iris Reinfeld through. She was known as the only daughter of the Reinfeld family, one of the 4 main houses of the kingdom, and as the bearer of the formidable title Princess Swordbearer. As she passed by with her companion, 2 students watched in awe from afar. One remarked on Iris's beauty, and the other added that just being her classmate was something to boast about, even though they had never spoken. Later, in the lecture hall, their conversation about her did not cease. One of the girls revealed what her father had told her. Iris herself was the most likely candidate for the next king. Her friend gasped in shock upon realizing that this potential future monarch was only 15 years old, the same age as herself. She stands by the window, her face gloomy, and sadly contemplates the nature of those who were born with everything. Her thoughts are interrupted by the sight of her friend Arya, who has fallen asleep at her desk. Gently waking her, Iris thanks Arya for the help with the morning practice. Arya, now awake, gently strokes Iris's head and says how sweet she is. Iris thanks her in return. This gesture brings a small, pleasant smile to the princess's face. The conversation turned to the recent fencing exam. Arya took it as a pleasant break and with a smile offers to go training with Iris anytime, but Iris quietly insists that she still needs more practice. When the school bell rings, her determination hardens and she silently vows to train until she becomes a swordswoman whom no one can defeat. Later in class, the noise of the students abruptly stopped with the appearance of a new figure. A young boy in strict attire stood before everyone and loudly ordered everyone to sit down. Students whispered in surprise, trying to understand who this boy was. He scanned the class with a glance and introduced himself. From today, he is their new homeroom teacher and temporary instructor in Kenjutsu. His name, he announced, is Alta sh Fates. The announcement swept through the class like a wave of shock. Iris' stares froze, and the students burst out in disbelief. These words echoed for a long time in their shared astonishment. She looks at the boy in disbelief. She cannot accept that he is the one who is supposed to teach them swordsmanship. Stopping her step, she demands to know how he dares to call himself a Kenjutsu teacher. Alta tries to calm her, explaining that the director himself gave consent, but his words barely soothe her outrage. Her classmates unanimously agree. Arya notes how strange it is to replace a homeroom teacher in the middle of the semester, and another student reminds everyone of Iris's formidable reputation. She won the national Kenjutsu tournament at only 10 years old and has an undefeated record that earned her the title Swordsman. Princess. He calmly listens to their protests, then announces a proposal to the whole class. A demonstration fight. With a confident smile, he says that if he loses, he will leave the class forever. The challenge moves them to the martial arts arena, and while Iris hesitates over the offer of a training fight, the boy with spiky hair steps forward, accepts the challenge on her behalf, and loudly declares that he can handle Alta perfectly and Iris does not need to fight at all. A student reprimands Alta about the nature of their weapon, asking if he even knows what a mock sword is, and explains that the blade of a magical sword does not cut or bleed, but when it touches it hurts. Then he sets a condition. If Alta manages to land at least one hit on him before the end of the lesson, he will admit defeat in response. Alta only nods in agreement and calmly takes a training sword from the rack nearby. The new instructor, already with a weapon in hand, turns to the gathered students and dismisses the idea of a one-on-one duel. Fighting them one by one is troublesome. Instead, he throws a shocking challenge. Let them all attack him at once. His words and immediately action. The students are instantly thrown into the air, their training swords clatter on the ground, and he stands unharmed amid the chaos and calmly says that they can all attack together. Stunning demonstration of skill leaves the rest of the students stunned and defeated. He stunned the students with his lightning-fast victory. One, still on the ground, does not believe it and asks how 20 of them could lose, recalling that someone asked for mercy, while nearby Arya with a worried expression quietly whispers Iris. While they process the result, Alta stands calmly and mentally admits he is definitely strong, much more than the previous instructor. On the neighboring bench, Iris and Arya silently watch him. Arya is the first to break the silence and says, acknowledging that the new instructor is truly powerful. Her friend's words barely reach Iris, her eyes narrow, all attention fixed on Alta, and one thought consumes her. Why would a person with such an obvious level of skill even propose a demonstration fight? Prompted by this question, she decisively stands up and strides to the center of the training hall. It's a pity, she says, her voice cutting through the whispering in the hall. She orders everyone to step back and declares that she will handle this herself. Her statement is met with contemptuous laughter from the other students. One of them sneers, warning her not to think she can defeat them, and declares that from now on everything is serious. At the noise, Alta turns to Iris and Arya with a smile. You are next, there is almost no time left, hurry up. Iris decisively accepts the challenge without hesitation. She steps forward and looks him straight in the eyes, the sand of Schweit. She begins to sincerely apologize for underestimating him. Her voice changes now, it carries confidence. She says she has already figured out his technique and childish tricks will no longer work on her. After her bold statement, she and Arya turn away from him. Arya says she can no longer endure and retreats. Iris agrees and they leave, leaving Alta alone, the undisputed winner of the demonstration fight. The pause lasted only a moment. With a dazzling flash, the princess lunged into attack, her adorned blade clashing with another in a shower of sparks. The confrontation had finally matured. Iris Reinfeld stood opposite Alta, fierce determination blazing on her face. She was preparing to engage him directly in battle. Before she could act, Arya dashed forward and delivered a lightning strike, but it was easily met. His blade deflected the attack, and the watching student could not believe it had been blocked. A single parry exploded into a fierce exchange of blows, the air filled with the relentless clang of steel on steel. But watching the duel, Iris shuddered as she realized Alta was moving even faster than before, leaving no gaps in his defense. If she did not find a weak spot, she would have to push her speed beyond the possible. Alta remained completely focused, his blade a seamless extension of his will. Their swords collided dazzlingly fast, and the watching student was completely bewildered, unable to comprehend what had happened in the blurred swiftness of the movements. The fight froze. Alta stood still and, thinking with admiration that such a skilled student could exist in this country, turned his gaze to the breathless Iris and asked directly, "Have you acknowledged my true mastery?" She said no words. Instead, Iris sharply inhaled, her eyes widened with sudden realization, her hand gripped the sword tighter, and this change in behavior caught everyone by surprise. She gathered herself and led her classmates in a fierce attack from several sides. Blades gleamed from all around, aimed at Alta, who stood at the storm's epicenter and deflected every strike with incredible ease. The movements of his feet blurred a dance without any unnecessary motion, and he shifted his weight to meet the next blow. He met her blade head-on, his face calm. He praised her tactic, the attempt to find his blind spot, but noted that in such an open place it was difficult to do, and with a determined look said that now he would take the initiative himself. True to his word, he dashed forward, and his furious speed stunned the spectators, who could only watch as he launched into attack. Seeing his friend in his path, Iris urgently shouted to Arya to retreat. The duel reached a boiling point, a whirlwind of steel and movement, when suddenly a clear bell rang out across the training field. The sound cut through the tension and instantly stopped the clash. All three fighters froze and raised their heads, somewhat surprised, recognizing the signal for the end of the period. She froze, sweat dripping down her forehead. The realization of the chasm between their skills overwhelmed her, leaving her with wide-open eyes and breathless. He addressed him formally and sternly, saying that, as promised, he would now be their class teacher and temporary instructor, breaking the stunned silence by asking if there were any questions or objections, and Iris looked at him and asked a completely unexpected question. How old he was. Shock was palpable in the air when Alta cheerfully announced that he was turning 12 this year. He officially placed himself under the students' care, asking them not to judge him by his youthful appearance. He mentally reviewed the mission. The young appearance turned out to be a predictable problem for infiltration. Under the guise of an instructor, the introduction took place. He considers the infiltration phase completed, but is still troubled by the thought of whether the commander will approve the situation he is using. Later, Commander Lamur explains to Alta. She says that Iris was initially a candidate for the Order of the Knights and Lamur wanted to assign her a guard, but guessed right. Iris proudly refused, saying she was strong enough and did not need a guard, and Lamur confirms. Sword Princess is indeed very strong, as she herself says. He admits, judging by her skills, Iris is almost right in her self-assessment. Then he adds that in his previous world when he was 30, he was called something like the Sword Saint. Everything fell into place in his head. His thoughts clarified his assessment. Iris is skilled, but not yet at the level of a true saint, and this daydream was interrupted by Commander Lamur, who suggested settling everything and said he had to take him to the medical station. Later, when he walks beside Iris, her friend Arya calls out, asking if she is okay, and Alta wonders silently. He never thought he would hear the title Sword Saint from someone like Iris. He looks at Iris and says she is right. He still hasn't managed to hit her with his sword, and quietly wonders to himself if she has started to hate him. Her face froze in determination. She did not lose and fiercely repeats to herself, she could not have lost. She froze in silent shock. The truth about the loss overwhelmed her, and for the first time since people began calling her Holy Sword, she felt such a deep chasm in her power. Her sword, she realized, seemed not to have even touched him. Her eyes narrowed, a fierce determination suddenly ignited in them. He was not fighting seriously, and neither was she. This was not the end yet. When Alta turned and walked away, the voice of a young boy cut through the quiet street. Wait, Sensei, and he loudly asked whether Alta had used magic and what would happen if he decided to fight back. He noticed the girl standing there with a look of confusion on her face, but before she could fully understand, she addressed him directly, her voice full of urgency. "Find me, seriously, please." And at that moment their first meeting occurred, the boy and the one known as the Sword Singer. Iris Reinfeld is intently watching the young instructor, her face stern, and she directly asks if he really intends to fight her seriously. Not with words, but with carefree laughter, his eyes squinted, he asked what had come over her, insisting that just a moment ago he was fighting seriously. Embarrassed, she begins to protest, but he has already turned away and points to the large doors, reminding her that they will be late for the next lesson, and insists that she go, while the other students look at the scene in confusion. Shortly after the training battle, walking down the stone corridor of the academy, the young instructor heard someone call out to him, "Alta sensei." He turned and saw another man in an instructor's cloak approaching him. He introduced himself as OTZ Colstar, head of the academic year, and enthusiastically spoke about the incredible skill of Iris Reinfeld. Her previous duel with the instructor was so one-sided that he could only sigh and complain there was nothing more he could teach her. He continued, revealing that the director told him, "The new teacher is actually a knight undercover." Everyone smiled and agreed that it was true, but reproached OTC for his loud voice. OTC apologized, but Alta waved his hand. The idea of infiltration fascinated her. OTZ Winks smiled, confident that Alta would get along well with the students, and said that any contender for the throne would be lucky to have such a guardian. Alta's face became thoughtful. He hoped so, but admitted he had questions and was worried. Had he accidentally broken the students' fighting spirit? When the administration left, the girls gathered around the table were completely enchanted. They showered the new teacher with compliments and questions, marveled at how strong he was despite his young age, eagerly asked where he was from, what his hobbies were, and even his height, invited him to spend time with them after lessons, and one girl confidently declared that he still would not defeat them. This warm reception, however, the boys did not share. They stood aside and smoldered with envy, while Alta, ignoring their looks, simply smiled to himself, confident that he got along well with the class. He addressed the class and announced that all further questions could wait until tomorrow. This was not the reaction he expected, but it would do for a temporary lecturer. As he turned away, he thought that only one troublemaker remained to be dealt with. Just then, Iris Reinfeld blocked his way, and with a determined expression, she directly asked him to fight her seriously. He looked her up and down, and a spark of irritation flashed across his face as he felt her persistence. She rushed forward, constantly shouting his title and pleading, and he sighed and reminded her that he had already said during their training fight he fought for real. In his soul, he admitted that her strength really impressed him, and from that very sword princess, this was to be expected, but aloud he simply asked her not to use that title. She completely ignored his request, her gaze sharpened as she insisted that he definitely did not fight seriously, and then demanded a duel using spells, the very ones that, as she pointed out, were forbidden in their previous match, and a drop of sweat rolled down his face as he realized the situation was worse than he thought. Her pleading grew. She grabbed his hand, begged for help with work, and swore to do anything for it. He shuddered, a harsh irritation froze on his face. He did not want trouble and could not understand why this one, who did not know how to lose, insisted so much on making an enemy of him. He mentally felt the weight of her offer. When a girl says, "I'll do anything," it never bodes well. To test her determination, he asked a hypothetical question. What would she do if asked to do something unpleasant? And this question completely caught Iris by surprise. He thought he had achieved his goal and that she understood where this would lead. He began to tell her that everything was fine. He thought his trick worked, but Iris's hands clenched on her skirt. Her posture was resolute. Her face flushed with a deep blush. She trembled, thoughts were in turmoil. She gathered her courage. If the teacher really wanted this, she was determined enough to go for it. Her unexpected determination shocked him. His eyes widened in shock. He could not believe she was really serious. An awkward silence fell between them, she with an embarrassed face, and he just watched. He gently tapped her on the head with a folded fan, bringing her back to reality. He explained that this was not a decision, it was despair. His sharp assessment threw Iris off balance and left her speechless. He apologized for exploding at her like that, but admitted that her situation looked very complicated and he saw no easy way out. Seeing her unwavering desperation, he gave in and proposed. If she was really ready to go that far, he would add a condition to their duel. Hope instantly lit up on Iris's face, and she gladly agreed. He laid out the conditions, pointing to a distant clock tower. From then on she had 30 minutes. If she managed to catch up with him within that time, he would fight her seriously. If not, she had to surrender, with a resolute understood. Iris accepted the challenge. She froze in amazement, watching as he stated his conditions, then simply jumped out of the second-floor window. He landed easily on the railing below, turned to her with a wide smile. He announced that he would run from her across the schoolyard, and although it might look childish, he had no intention of letting her win. She barely had time to fully comprehend his words when he burst forward with an explosion of speed, frightening other students as he flashed past them along the path. He leapt into the air, filling his body with magic to enhance it. He knew that even in a child's body he could perform physical feats unattainable for an ordinary adult. Such was the true power of the former holy sword. Iris rushed after him, teeth clenched with determination. She vowed not to let him escape, realizing that the one she was chasing was very skilled. It was time for her to get serious too. The chase led her into an overgrown part of the campus where she finally lost sight of him. She grumbled irritably that he really was acting like a child, but quickly pulled herself together. There was still time on the clock. She just needed to find a way to catch him. She stood, pondering her next move, when suddenly a small object flew out of the trees and hit her right in the shoulder. The projectile was not from her teacher. Two figures emerged from the shadows of the forest. One a large, threatening man in dark glasses with a pair of curved blades. He greeted the sword princess with a sinister smile and remarked that she was finally completely alone. She instantly recognized them, her salons and assassins, and could barely move. The hooded figure noticed the paralyzing poison now coursing through her veins and called her a worthy weapon. A spark of power crackled in her clenched fist, but the grip of the poison was swift and relentless. The poison weakened her. She dropped to her knees, her body unresponsive. The giant in dark glasses laughed cruelly, mocking her helplessness, and mockingly asked how she intended to fight if she couldn't even move her hand. Deep cold pierces her, her eyes wide open. A spark of defiance struggles against the creeping fear. With horror slowly engulfing her, she realizes she is about to be killed. The thought seems pitiful, though she had prepared for this, but the reality itself overwhelms her. From a branch above, a quiet "oh" sounds, and a small figure in a cloak looks down at the scene. Suddenly, another figure bursts into the clearing. Arya, her classmate, gathers magical energy in her palms and resolutely declares she will not allow Iris to die here. Her appearance only amuses the burly killer. He smiles broadly and challenges the so-called sword princess, mockingly reducing her to merely a celebrated but worn princess. In a cloak, Instructor Alta addressed Iris and Arya. He said this enemy must be dealt with and they should retreat. He warned Iris that what she was about to see might shock the student and advised her to close her eyes. Iris looked up distrustfully and recognized him, and he calmly nodded yes, it was the sensei. He stood opposite the largest killer, who was mockingly sneering from the side. The man mocked him as a boy without weapons and sarcastically called him a wonderful reinforcement. The next moment, the killer's mockery abruptly ended. His head was cut off, and a look of shock froze on his face. The attack was so swift that Arya only froze in disbelief. She was too fast to be seen. Nearby, Iris watched from the ground, and their instructor remained completely calm. He stood with an outstretched hand, the source of the invisible attack. Iris, still weakened, could not comprehend whether what she had just seen was a magical duel of her teacher. He turned his attention to the last figure in the hood and calmly said that it was thanks to them that he now knew about their deadly magic. The killer asked why he did not chase those who fled, to which the instructor replied that he would go if necessary. He continued the survey and decided that this was a group of professional killers. Noticing that the only one who did not flee was killed, he guessed probably reinforcements were nearby. Meanwhile, Commander Lamur thought that her premonition about the attack was justified, and admitted that she had miscalculated. Her target turned out to be strangely skillful. His gaze fell on the wounded Iris Reinfeld, who was kneeling on the ground. He uttered a grim truth, someone alive or dead. A new silhouette emerged from the shadows and threw off the hood. He rejoiced at the news that he would be able to fight the Holy Sword Princess. Despite the injury, Iris met his gaze. Her determination did not waver, even when the killer noted that she was just a girl and seemed incapable of organizing an attack of such scale. He pointed directly at a young boy with a smug smile on his face and said mockingly, "There you are." At first he dismissed it as a senseless fight, but now considered himself lucky. The sharp metallic clang, the katana is drawn from the sheath. But the blade does not belong to the hooded killer. Instead, another figure emerges among the trees with his own sword ready. A burly man with a shaved head and sharp marks on his face, who calls himself Azuma Kurai, one of the Kinkakashu. On the forest clearing, strewn with fallen, swordsman Azuma Kurai stands over his grim deed. Nearby, the young boy Iris Reinfeld watches as Commander Lamur steps forward to rush at the killer. She demands to know his identity, although she already recognizes him as a member of the Kinkakashu, the notorious mercenary clan that kills anyone, regardless of status, for the right price. cold gaze can either dispel doubts or sow suspicion. He truly is Zuma Kurai from the Kinkakashu. She, indifferent and unwavering, informs Azuma that he has entered their country and orders him not to move her business now as a fight with the boy standing behind him, and Azuma may get his chance during or after the clash, and the killer seems to feel the immense power radiating from her. The boy watches the tense confrontation, his face serious. In his soul, he does not feel the joy of battle that shines in others, and nearby Iris looks on with obvious concern. At Azuma Kurai's lips, the corners rose in a smile. The escalation of events brought him genuine delight. He says he wishes this moment could last forever, but already sees that he can no longer restrain himself. Opposite him, Lamur stands ready for action. Heightens on the hill, she reaches for the sword, her fingers trembling with tension and readiness. The boy instantly recognizes this stance. In the whirl of movement, both warriors exploded into action. Lamur lunges forward, her blade flashing in a lightning strike, a blow executed simultaneously with the draw, and Azuma responds in kind, his katana springing from its sheath to meet the attack head-on. Their swords clashed with a deafening roar, and at the point of impact, a dazzling cloud of sparks erupted. Under Lamur, Owen recoiled. She did not even feel the attack that had just grazed her and only now realized. It was another sword strike she had not seen. Opposite her, the assassin Azuma Kurai confirmed her suspicion with a stern look. His attack was truly invisible. Watching from the side, a young boy in a dark cloak instantly understands everything. He recognizes the technique, the invisible wind blade that lifted the opponent, a skill perfected by the legendary sword Saint Roll I South. His opponent Azuma sheathes his blade, his face showing genuine surprise. He admits he never thought he could fight against the Kenjutsu Sent swords, says he himself is a user of wind magic, and looks at the boy with new respect, calling him a very interesting child. He speaks and his power comes alive. A large, complex magical circle glowing brightly appears in the air before him, and at its center pulses a rune of wind. Energy crackles around Azuma as he prepares to unleash his wind attack, while opposite him the boy stands firm, a wind blade swirling around his hands. He is ready to accept the challenge. Their forces collide in a fierce storm of invisible blades, the air seeming to crack from the blows, and Lamur freezes in astonishment, realizing they exchange these devastating cuts without taking a single step. Zoom, his power grows even more. A more complex magical circle with runes of wind, rizu, and void forms around him, and a manic, blood-splattered smile spreads across his face as he swings his katana and roars with excitement at the duel. The rivals break the deadlock and rush toward each other across the clearing, preparing for the next decisive battle. He dashed like lightning, his blade cleanly slicing through the body of Zuma Kurai. From the terrible wound, a fountain of dark blood shot out, and the assassin's body was thrown backward by the force of the blow. The assassin staggered, his face twisted in shock and pain. He clutched the wound, his body trembling, life beginning to fade. Despite the mortal wound, Azuma released a bitter smile and, barely holding on, demanded to know the name of his opponent. The boy met his gaze and directly spoke it all for Schweitz. Hearing the name, Azuma weakly chuckled, bowed, and admitted that he never thought he would feel such elation at the moment of his own death. He was glad but did not want to rot in the east. With a final maniacal laugh, Azuma Kurai's body disintegrated into a cloud of dark particles that scattered into oblivion right before Alta's. The danger past, Alta exhaled a long sigh of relief. Iris, watching him, noticed that she hadn't seen him so focused in battle for a long time. He admitted that, as always, he was nervous. Standing before her in a quiet forest clearing, he apologized for killing 2 assassins in her presence and hoped that now she at least somewhat imagined how strong he was. He said that the enemies had long gone and now everything was fine, extended his hand to help her up. Iris looked at his hand, thanked him, and placed her hand in his. He firmly squeezed her hand, his voice steady. "I am here." Iris, still trembling from the experience, met his gaze. Her endurance stunned him for a moment. He couldn't believe it. Even after such a brutal fight, she remained calm and focused, and he wondered if she was real. After some time in one of the academy's rooms, Iris confirmed that she had finished preparations. The building stood silently against the sky, sharply contrasting with the recent violence. He sat opposite her and sincerely regretted scaring her, because as her guardian he felt he had to reflect on his actions, especially since he was glad she hadn't been hurt too badly. She reassured him that she was fine, confessing that she was just a little nervous, and added that he, so to speak, was used to such things. He smiled disarmingly and explained that he was born in a dangerous place in what he called his previous life. Her face became serious. After a moment of hesitation, she asked him again if he would fight seriously with her this time. The request caught him off guard, a reminder of the promise he had truly made to her. He looked at her persistence and wondered why she was so eager to fight him, but inside he understood she only lacked a cruel, real fight to the death, and if they fought for real now, he would be confident in the outcome. She stood up and turned away, determination shining in her. She said that now her goal was to finish school, a promise made to her mother, and he, looking at her, felt a wave of confusion and realized he had to find a good reason to refuse her without breaking his mission. He listens, surprised. Iris looks away, clutching her bandaged hand, and quietly says that after graduation she wants to become a knight. He responded with a warm smile and said that as a knight he welcomes her desire. Although it was a pity for those who wanted to see her as the next ruler, he believes she has the skills to succeed, and a faint smile touched her lips. Her face became serious again. She says that in pursuit of that dream she honed her skills and never knew defeat. Because of this she was nicknamed Sword-Scent Princess, but inside she feels she has not become stronger at all. She continued, claiming that she had won continuously. It was into this sluggish, challenge-free life that he suddenly burst in her new instructor who appeared at the academy. She leans forward with burning determination and says this is her chance to grow, an opportunity she will not let slip away. As she speaks, he understands how much she believes in it. She wants to fight him, well aware of her strength, because she desperately craves victory and to break free from stagnation. He pondered her passionate plea and felt it would be wrong to ignore the wish of a person who could become his colleague. Iris looked at him, a drop of sweat gleaming on her forehead, and she anxiously awaited his decision. He raises his hand and interrupts her thoughts, saying that her arguments have gotten on his nerves and that he does not know how many more times they will have to fight for her to get what she wants. Iris, thinking he is refusing, begins to protest. Before she could continue, he clarified his intention. He would give her special lessons, and so that no one would find out, they would meet after classes starting the next day. Then he asked if she agreed to such an arrangement. Her face froze in determination. There was only one goal in her mind, to become stronger. Seeing her zeal, everyone suggested starting with a training duel using magic. The answer? She shines. The former irritation disappeared. A bright smile played on her face and she gladly accepted his instructions. He reflected on his new duties. As her temporary mentor, he would help her grow, which would ease his main mission to be her protector. Yet he still could not shake the feeling of the burden of increasingly growing responsibilities. When they walk down one of the grand corridors of the academy, he reflects on the situation. It seems like a natural development of events, and he understands that the circumstances are perfectly suited for his plan. On the stairs, he stops her and says there is one more thing he wants her to use it around the clock. When she asks what it is, he pulls out a small fan-shaped object, and a smile creeps across his face because he remembers her earlier promise to do everything to become stronger. A magical barrier has been raised around the Academy of Fiora at night. It seemed to cut off all intruders, but OTC Coldstar looks grim and mutters that the matter with the group known as Kinkakashu has become too serious. Alta returns and OTZ calls him, asking where he is going. The young man looks back over his shoulder with a barely noticeable smile and says he will just pop into the city for a moment, then move on. He steps into the bustling city quarter and enters a tavern. Inside, Commander Lamur Owen is sitting, holding a mug, and says that although she did not need to come in person, she still came because of the importance of this incident. Sitting opposite her, everyone fell silent to listen as she demands to hear about his first mission, about how he acted on the assignment, and in particular, how he progressed with Lady Iris. He recalls a recent conversation with Iris and explains to Lamur that they are already on good terms, then admits that he gave her an important item to carry and cast a detection spell on her, so now he will always know where she is. Returning to the present, he pointed to the layout of the girls' dormitories on the table and assured Lamur that if they attacked Iris now, he would be there in 10 minutes. Lamur appreciated his flawless work but sternly warned him not to abuse this power. He just laughed and waved it off. Lamur switches the conversation and asks how the investigation of the attacker is progressing. He has reported that the man in glasses was a convict with a turbulent past, and those who escaped are probably the same. Main problem, he summarizes, is Kinkakashu. Commander Lamur Owen emotionally talks about the threat, spreading wanted posters on the table. She explains that Kinkakashu terrorized the whole world, and after extensive research, she has their service cards and biographies in her hands, and a reward has been announced for the head of each member of this unusual worm subgroup. She warns him, don't be fooled by the money alone, adding that she heard Kinkakashu operate in small teams, so she considers it safe to assume that some are still present in the royal city, and Alta, surprised, only mutters about boundaries. He drank from his wooden mug, sighed, and admitted that everything is really bad. Together with some regret, he realized his mistake. He thought that victory over one would make the others surrender, but it was a bad idea, and now he understood that he killed that man without interrogating him. And his commander abruptly changed the subject and reported that a small group of stern black knights is currently hunting the fugitive. She specified that this man is the first officer of the same rank, known by the code name Blue Sword, and asked if he had ever met him, to which Alta replied that they had crossed paths during missions but had never truly gotten acquainted. She explains that she always left him alone. That was how he managed to conceal his true identity, and since she was operating under a false name to infiltrate the school, she needed a skilled agent to handle matters outside. She smiles, calling Blue Sword young but very capable. In a cheerful tone, she suggests that as soon as the mission is over, everyone will go out for a drink together, and Alta, sipping hot milk, quietly notes that he is underage and does not drink alcohol, but still eagerly looks forward to the occasion. The commander leans forward with a jug in her hands and jokingly urges him to stop resisting and drink, but Alta pushes her mug away, says, "Stop," and sharply replies that as the commander, she should be the one to be stubborn, after which she seems to give in and simply says, "Well, okay." Her face becomes serious again. She tells him that, unfortunately, no evidence was found linking the organizer to the attempted murder of Lady Iris, so his task remains unchanged. He must stay focused on her protection. She adds that she has heard about Blue Sword's abilities, and for now they can only wait for some clues, and all the equipment confirmed the order with a simple Roger. Outside the royal city, in the ruins of a grand arch structure, shadows gather under the darkening sky. In these ruins, a secret meeting of the Kinkakashu is underway. One hooded figure is seated on an improvised throne made of debris and looks authoritatively at the others standing, wrapped in darkness. The seated figure, face half hidden under the hood, speaks in a cold, final tone. The news is confirmed. Azuma is dead. Another of them, a young swordsman, throws back his hood and with a wide mocking smile says it's a pity Azuma wanted to kill his target but died himself, then contemptuously asks about those who escaped. The leader, without a smile, drives the swordsman away, saying that someone as worthless as him is not needed here. The swordsman simply agrees and turns to leave. But as he turns, the leader raises a small cylindrical device. It explodes with a blinding flash of light, and the leader's voice calmly echoes the order to refrain from unnecessary killings. The swordsman sharply turns back, his face twisted with rage. He demands to know what the leader wants. He shouts that a killer who does not fight is useless. He proclaims that all they ever needed was the Kinkakashu itself. At that very moment, a third person appears. A young man with spiky light hair emerges behind the leader and presses a cold blade to his throat, while the leader does not move for a moment, eyes closed. The blade remained motionless, but the tense confrontation was interrupted by a huge figure stepping out of the shadows. The newcomer, a massive bearded member of Kinkakashu, swung his uniquely curved sword and roared for them to stop, reminding that members are forbidden to harm each other during service. The leader listened as another subordinate, a hooded swordsman, cheered up and declared that he himself would fight the young knight. Then the leader explained. Azuma lost not to the princess but to her teacher, and with a word of agreement allowed the swordsman to enter the fight. Even before the duel began, the great hall suddenly filled with soldiers in armor. A company of knights arrived, surrounding the killers, and their commander stepped forward. His suspicions were confirmed. Finally, he had cornered them. He explained that he had conducted numerous sweeps in territories where criminals hid, and his gaze fell on the young man with spiky hair, Beltrasso, the Blue Sword. When the Kinkakashu leader realized this, the impatient hooded swordsman demanded to know what would happen next. The large bearded thug announced that first of all they needed to finish off the knights, and the hooded swordsman smiled crookedly, noticing the boldness of the knights who dared to oppose them. In response, the Kinkakashu leader drew an exquisite hilt. From its end, a dazzling beam burst forth and a blade of pure energy grew, while the knight commander watched, stunned. It was a sword without a physical blade. He addressed the leader of the Kula and, noting that they already knew who he was, said that this simplified everything and issued an ultimatum. Do not resist, and he will not kill you, but their leader will be taken into custody in any case. Rejecting the offer, the leader rushed forward and with a powerful swing of the energy blade unleashed an avalanche of dark, sharp projectiles that flew straight at the line of knights. First Officer Beltrasso stands alone among the fallen members of Kinkakashu, sword at the ready. The stone courtyard is strewn with bodies, proof of his lightning-fast and brutal counterattack. Grim determination is frozen on his face, and his cheeks are stained with blood. As the Kinkakashu leader was returning, Bell shouted to him, reminding him of the promise not to kill needlessly. The leader waved it off, saying it was necessary, and the large bearded enforcer laughed and said he did not understand Bell at all. The leader threw a light farewell and began to retreat, but Belle, unwilling to let them go, rushed forward with a fierce cry, sword raised high for a decisive strike. Just as his attack was about to hit, the leader released a stream of water that swirled and thundered down on everything around. Another member of Kinkakusha sadly noted that their organization was cruel, and the leader smiled and said he wanted to have some fun and those who enjoy killings should be allowed to do their thing. As the fierce clash died down under the first light of day, at the Fiora Academy, Iris Rinfell stood in the courtyard diligently practicing swordsmanship. The solitary training turned into a dynamic duel. Focused, she exchanged a lightning-fast series of strikes with another student, and their blades rang in the quiet morning air. Standing aside in the role of instructor, Alta nodded approvingly and told the students she hoped everyone had their own training. Iris's comrades watching admired how cool she was, and one student wondered if she could also wield a one-handed sword. While he continued to watch, Arya no Triya approached him with a worried face. She complained to Alta-sensei that kenjutsu was not her strong suit, and wondered why nobles couldn't just hire a knight to protect them instead of learning to fight themselves. She was still sulking at Iris, persistently stating that even if she became a knight, she was not going to protect her. Watching this, Alta strangely relaxed and pondered that the recent attack by Kankakoshu had been successfully concealed. He glanced over the students before him. All were at the national school level, and many considered kenjutsu merely a lifestyle for the nobility. In such an environment, Iris, a princess and holy swordswoman claiming the throne, should be unreachable for her classmates. He assumed that after the crisis subsided she could get down to lessons, but suddenly noticed her spying on him as if ordering him to pay attention. His thoughts were interrupted when Arya called him, her voice sharp and direct, "Sensei." She stepped forward, hesitated for a moment, then put it on herself while Iris watched from behind. Her gaze hardened with determination. "Let's duel," she declared, and for a moment there was silence. She was stunned and inwardly did not understand why challenge him right now, at the very first conversation. Then Arya explained her motive. She knew about that secret technique he used on Iris on the first day of classes, a move that seemed to plunge the opponent into drowsiness and was the only one he ever took seriously. He wanted him to use that move on her. When Iris approached where the Iscaria was taking place, Alta recalled their first training clash. It really ended inconclusively when time ran out. He smiled and agreed to her request. "I don't mind if we do it again." Arya's face lit up and she clenched her fists in a small, triumphant exclamation. The acceptance of the duel swept like a wave through the spectators. Iris Rinfell looked especially confused by this event. Her face turned red and she stammered that she had already done something. Her companions looked puzzled by her reaction. While Iris fumbled with words, Arya announced she was ready. She stepped forward and overly bright round devices materialized in her hands. On the other side of the hall, Alta waited patiently. His sword hung freely at his side. Without wasting a moment, she activated her ability. A complex, shimmering mandala of decorated blade-like shields appeared around her, rotating in a protective yet threatening formation, while she stood with closed eyes at the center of this stunning display of power. Then the eyes suddenly opened, filled with sharp, unwavering attention. He met her resolute gaze, his face unreadable, tightly gripping the sword with both hands. He simply asked, "Do not be too harsh with me." During training, Alta closely watches her opponent. Arya Natriash stands ready, holding two training blades. This technique is extremely difficult. It requires simultaneously directing even streams of magic into both blades, and she is the only one in the entire academy who can do it. She dashed forward, a blurred whirl of movement across the training ground, Alta calm, holding his training sword at the ready and inviting her to attack when she is ready. Instantly, she was above him. The blade stopped just before his face. He felt her closeness with a steady gaze and noticed how close she had come. From the balcony above, Iris Rinfell and several other students held their breath, watching the duel unfold, while on the training field below, Alta stood firm, ready for the next move. She intensifies the attack. Her facial expression changes to surprised as she continues her rapid strikes. He meets her barrage of attack. She's only blade deflects her paired blades with precise, sharp movements as she spins and stabs. The spectators froze in amazement. One of the boys exclaimed, disbelieving, comparing her movements to those of a cat, and Iris's companion was equally stunned and asked how Arya could move with such incredible speed. While Alta parried another strike, Arya unleashed a new power dark, adorned with patterns. Magical energy burst from both her fake swords and exploded towards him. As she intensified the attack, he calmly watched her movements, noticed her skill, and realized that she was carefully searching for a gap in his defense. In the silence, someone whispered whether it was a miss. Arya's face hardened, and she replied that she was just experimenting with different approaches. From the side, Iris observed and thought that Arya better stick to her usual style. With a sharp declaration, she rushed forward, her body becoming a blurred shadow. Alta instantly noticed that she had accelerated even more, and the student nearby froze in disbelief. The air filled with the sharp ringing of steel as she unleashed a barrage of rapid attacks. He parried every strike, and his blade was a reliable shield against the relentless pressure. Her feet danced across the hall floor. She did not ease the pressure until the barrage of blows gave no moment of respite. After parrying another strike, he was struck by an epiphany. What he felt from her was not just talent, but a true sea of combat experience, and he realized that she was so hardened that she could probably even fight Zumi Kurai from Kenkaku Shio. Deciding that the duel had already served its purpose, he called her over and said it was time to finish. Her skills were already proven, and their draw led nowhere, especially when she did not let him keep his distance. She did not listen to him and launched into an attack. With one move, he grabbed her wrist and stopped the blade a moment before the strike, his voice firm as he repeated, "I told you, stop." He took her hand and joked that she shouldn't talk about it. Arya lowered her gaze, thanked him, and admitted that he was indeed strong. A gentle, almost relieved smile appeared on her face, and she raised her eyes to him, seeking confirmation. Tension scatters when the students around erupt in thunderous applause, celebrating the incredible show of mastery by both. Amid the applause, Arya turns away from Alta and rushes to Iris, impatiently asking if she saw her performance. Iris smiles, confirms she did, and enthusiastically says that Arya was incredible. But immediately after the praise came a question. Iris reminded Arya that she had previously said she was not interested in fighting anyone except her, and Arya froze, pondering this contradiction. Iris quietly laughed and gently stroked Arya's head, kindly asking what that was about. Arya beamed from the attention, clearly delighted. Alta, watching from afar, quietly smiled, and understanding slowly dawned on him. He realizes that Arya's actions were like an attempt to regain Iris's favor. This touches him a little, but he firmly decides to himself not to allow her to attack him out of jealousy in the future. Turning his attention back to the rest of the class, Alta clapped his hands and, refocusing, announced that it was time to return to practice. He finishes the training, encouraging the students to become stronger at their own pace. With a slight smile to himself, he notes that Iris and Arya are clear exceptions, while the other students sigh, somewhat upset by his high demands. When the academy bell tower chimes, signaling the end of the day, he leaves with the other instructors. They thank him for his hard work, and their conversations and laughter fill the courtyard as they disperse. He sighed with relief, confident that his duties were finally over, but suddenly Iris shouted to him. She said she had put on the uniform and brought a sword dummy to avoid suspicion, and insisted that it was time to go. He agreed, though somewhat surprised. They arrived at a secluded spot in the forest. Iris decisively declared that she would be under his care until sunset, and he smiled, acknowledging her determination and asking her to take it easy. The relaxed tone prompts her to ask if he sees this as just a simple fight. She clarifies that her main goal is to see his abilities. He understands that her admiration has made her a bit reckless. She notes how strange it would look if some other student saw them together. Embarrassed, Iris blushed and stammered a little before gathering her thoughts. She insists that since it was her request, their private training must remain an absolute secret, to which Iris nervously agrees. Having agreed on the terms of the session, he draws his sword around the blade, materializes an intricate, gear-like structure of light, and he asks her to watch carefully, asking if she notices what has happened. He even releases a powerful, sweeping strike with the blade. It is as if the very air bends and warps around the arc of his blade, enhanced by magic, and Iris watches, mesmerized. He turns to Iris and asks about the technique he just demonstrated, and she, with a serious and focused look, confirms that she can reproduce it. Response: she draws her sword and tries to perform the maneuver. Her blade carves a quick, powerful arc in the air before her. Her attempt, however, failed. She admits with slight irritation that she could not see the technique clearly enough to parry it correctly, and he calmly notes that her honesty is a good trait. She says, although she could not repeat that move, she already has enough speed and agility to defend herself from his attack, and she is noticeably surprised by this herself. She froze in place, the image of the invisible blade echoing in her thoughts as she tried to understand what he meant. He continues, reminding her of the swordsman Azuma Karai who had previously targeted her. He notes that Azuma managed his kenjutsu, hinting that there is no reason why she could not do the same. In his eyes, her potential was no different from Azuma's, so he set himself a new goal to throw this very challenge to Iris. Iris says she doubts it. It is not distrust of him, but of her own ability to deflect an attack she cannot even see, and she struggles with this uncertainty, while he silently stands under the tree, his face calm and resolute, and leaves fall around. He demonstrated it with a quick, smooth motion. His blade flashed through the air and with incredible precision cut several falling leaves. At this, Iris froze in surprise and asked if he really cut the leaves without looking. He confirmed and said that it is the same as when she felt the deadly intent of the dagger aimed at her shoulder. The principle was explained in detail. The ability to sense without looking is what is called the sixth sense. He explained that this is the very ability with which Azuma deflected his invisible blade, and added that if Iris could use it, she would have no problems at all. He admitted that it is not easy. The leaves have no murderous intent, so everything is complicated. But that is exactly why we train, he insisted, and after a moment of hesitation, she agreed to try. She took a deep breath, focusing under the tree as leaves began to fall around her. She closed her eyes, lunged forward, and her blade sliced through the air with a wide, decisive swing aimed at a single leaf. The blade passed through empty air. Everyone watched her attempt, then calmly said, "Good try, you missed." Iris's expression tightened with irritation. He reassured Iris, this is not a skill that can be mastered overnight, so don't despair, but sternly added, if you don't learn to sense it, our next duel will be pointless. Her face hardened with determination. She said she would do it. He responded by raising the leaf again and asked her to first try to sense its presence. Since then, he lived between training with Iris's and duties as a guard at the academy, often patrolling the grounds late into the night. He stood in the night silence when suddenly his gaze fell on the large glowing barrier of the academy. He approached, carefully examined it, and made sure it was working properly. While he stood there, Commander Lamur unexpectedly approached from behind. He asked why he had come to the academy now. She continued, saying that he better not go beyond the academy's barrier. Her unexpected warning surprised him. To clarify, they are not in the academy, but in a corner of the royal capital, and this truth means that everything has become much worse. With a grim expression, she reports that the bodies of the pursuer squad led by Bel Trousseau, the blue guy, were found far from them in the church. In the academy's reception room hangs an oppressive silence. Commander Lamur and Alta sit on different sofas, and OTC Cold Star stands by the fireplace with crossed arms. He turns to the commander, his concern visible, asks if she is okay. Lamur, her gaze lowered to the hill and the sword, gives a brief, not very convincing confirmation. She begins the report, her voice firm despite her appearance. 9 bodies of the pursuing group commanded by the first officer Bel Trousseau were found in the abandoned building. She adds that it is unknown whether the last member of the squad is alive, so they can only wait for his return. Her words paint a grim picture, a ruin soaked in blood and covered with debris. She adds that although there are obvious signs that Bel resisted, there were no magical traces and not the slightest hint that he managed to wound the enemy. All the events and this chilling suspicion completely stunned the pursuers. OTZ reacts with disbelief, but everything comes down to one confident truth: this new enemy is even stronger than Azuma. His gaze returns to Lamur, who is visibly nervous. He notices her unease and understands how hard it is for the commander, who cares so much about her people. When her hand clenches into a fist, she cannot accept that Bel might lose without even landing a single blow. He leaned back in the chair, shadows deepened around the room, a quiet determination settled on his face. Now he understood. This is a matter to which he is not a stranger. He reached out to the device on the table and realized, good, Bel Trousseau left them something, a voice artifact, a recording that preserved the details of his last moments. From the recording, Commander Owen presented the conclusion. The enemy is a band of swordsmen, and named 3 key figures: the man who led the band, the woman who killed several from Bel's squad, and the man who personally killed Bel Trousseau. She continued, explaining to Alta and OTZ that the killer is already heading to the academy. This is a person impossible to track, and he can appear at any moment. She noticed how convenient it was that there was only one enemy, because she was convinced that only she and Alta could fight back. With a determined look, she declared that they would give him a warm welcome. Roger simply replied. Having received his consent, Lamur officially asked them for cooperation in this situation. She ordered OTZ to ensure that all personnel stayed off campus if the fight went beyond the barrier. Inside, all the technicians confirmed their determination. They were true knights. OTZ, with a stern and tense expression, addressed Alta and BDEs and explained that since he was responsible for night patrols, they should contact him immediately if anything unusual happened. The young instructor barely smiled, agreed to the arrangement, and added that of course he would provide a record of the hours worked. Lamur cast a sharp look at him, as if accusing him of only seeking extra pay for overtime. After the briefing, the days dragged on in deceptive calm. There were no more attacks from the swordsman gang, and everything at the academy went as usual. A week had passed since Alta gave Iris the task. She trained persistently in a secluded forest glade, her long hair fluttering, and she stood ready with a training sword. With the shark pup in front of her, she put into action what she had learned, her silhouette becoming a blurred streak as she swung the blade through the air. Despite all efforts, a wrinkle of irritation appeared on her forehead. She turned to Alta, who was watching from the base of a neighboring tree, and admitted that she could barely feel the falling leaves but could not even touch them, and her hand clenched into a fist, a sign of growing impatience. Her irritation quickly turned into determination. She looked ahead, sweat running down her face, and gathered herself, thinking that now she would not give up. Renewed determination fueled her movements, rushed forward, her blade slicing through the air, barely missing another falling lead bullet. He watched her struggle, his face thoughtful. He anticipated that it would take time, but her complete inability to cut even one leaf seriously worried him. This training was far from what she needed to defend herself against the swordsman gang. He wondered whether he should reveal his true identity, that he was a knighthand, whether a real threat would become a stronger motivation. He instantly rejected this idea. Her impulsiveness could push her to recklessly rush somewhere alone. He grimaced, thinking Iris could have expelled him from the academy herself. He observes and struggles inside, tries on options, and considers this matter troublesome. So for now he remains under the commander's orders because Iris's training is the most important thing for him. Emerging from behind the trees, he approaches her directly. He calls Iris, says it's good that she trains every morning, but asks if she is not pushing herself too hard. She turns around, surprised by his appearance. He immediately got to the point, said that he was informed about her dozing off in other lessons, and as the class teacher he cannot ignore it. The accusation caught Iris off guard. She opened her eyes wide and blushed embarrassedly. She stammers, trying to explain that the morning practice is to blame, admits that she still hasn't cut off a single leaf, insists that the training with Arya was not frivolous, and promises to be more careful, on her face a mixture of shame and disappointment. Seeing her scraped hands and exhausted appearance, he decides to intervene and tells her, "Rest today," but Iris instantly protests, asking why they should stop if she is determined to continue. He calmly says that he is going to change the training method, and then, as if abruptly switching, asks what she thinks about going with Arya to have a cup of tea. When he says her name, a voice comes from behind the nearby tree. Arya steps into the clearing and says she noticed her. Iris turns around, stunned by the sudden appearance of her friend. Arya, apparently confused, mumbles that she thought she had hidden perfectly. Not losing composure, he looked at the two girls and directly asked Arya why she was here. When asked directly, Arya looks away and, blushing slightly, admits that she was worried, explains that he has been acting strangely lately and stopped their morning training sessions. She calmly tells her that he knew for a week that she was watching them. Hearing this, surprised, Iris apologizes and explains that she asked their sensei to tutor her a little. He smiles and suggests everyone go to the dining hall to continue the conversation. To himself, he thinks that this is even better, no one got hurt. This will give Iris a change of scenery, and the jealousy of the surroundings will probably prevent her from challenging him to duels anymore. Arya, she puts forward another idea. Since their sensei is so strong, it is natural for her to have him as a mentor, so from now on she joins their training sessions. Sudden words stun Alta and Iris. They just stand there, eyes wide open in shock. He instantly got confused, stumbled, and muttered embarrassedly that he didn't mean that at all, while the two girls were watching. She interrupts him, approaches closely, and confidently points a finger, telling him to give it a rest, and rhetorically asks if that is really a problem. Having decided for herself, she puts her arm around the surprised Iris and says that this will remain their secret. Feeling oppressed, she sighs and asks not to tell the other students. She finishes the training and says that that's all for today. Arya takes it lightly, while Iris looks completely exhausted, her face pale from fatigue. Although exhausted, she agrees aloud because if Fate Sensei says so, then it's time to stop. Just as they were about to part ways, he stops them and says there is one more thing. He takes out a small, sharp dagger, and its blade gleams. In response, Arya raised her hands and smiled confidently, not at all afraid of the sudden appearance of a weapon. She winks at Iris, encouraging and boasting that she will definitely handle such a task. Iris, however, looks doubtful. She doubts whether Arya is really capable. She clearly explains to Iris that this blade is unlike any other weapon Iris has seen before. Clenching her jaw, Iris looks intently, and her facial expression becomes firm with determination. Looking at them, he thinks about the situation. Arya is still a mystery, but the powerful Reinfeld family vouched for her, and he knows her participation in training will make Iris grow faster. When the daytime training ended, they were returning to the academy buildings. Iris invited him for tea. The sun was still shining, but he categorically refused, saying he would go to sleep. Her surprise was obvious, and she reproached him with a smile for the childish habit of going to bed so early. If you turn away, explaining that the sensei is a busy person. Later, he walked through the empty streets of the city and quietly thought that because of the curfew at night, there was no one around. His thought instantly dissipated. On the path ahead, a figure emerged from an explosion of dark energy, and it turned out that someone was really there. His gaze caught a severed armored glove lying in a fresh bloodstain on the cobblestones. Hooded figures stood nearby, dark aura radiating from their hands. This figure, a young man with light hair peeking out from under his hood, addressed him directly, gestured to the blood-soaked spot, warned everyone that if they did not obey, they would end up the same way, and confessed that he was the one who had felled Azuma. He did not stop mocking, sneering, asking if Alta was really a teacher. With a piercing look, he then sharply demanded to know if Alta was the same scoundrel who killed his comrades. The threatening stance of the swordsman instantly softened. Surprise flashed in his eyes. He admitted that he did not expect Alta to break through the barrier and come straight toward him. Calmly, Alta replied, "I am surprised too." Suddenly, behind him, the main gate flew open, and with a crash a new warrior burst in, introducing himself as Fult Misina from the swordsman gang. He announced that he had come to kill Alta along with the very same sword princess, and the hooded leader of the swordsmen considered himself lucky. In the deserted courtyard, Fultman Senta stands opposite a young boy in a dark cloak. With a mad smile, he throws a short command, "Draw your sword." The boy is silent, his hand resting on the hilt of his own weapon, calmly assessing the situation. The antagonist looked at the huge, segmented weapon of the opponent and wondered if it could even be called a sword, but Fult was focused on something else, demanding to know where the girl was, and declaring that after dealing with the boy, he would kill the princess of the sacred sword. In response, the boy simply apologized. The swordsman laughed shortly and sharply. "I am used to the boy asking me such questions so easily." Entertainment disappears. In its place flares up rage. He makes a powerful swing, twisting the weapon, and roars at the boy not to try to surpass him. Suddenly, parts of the weapon burst forward, stretching out in a chain with incredible speed, and caught the hero by surprise. The boy reacts instantly, twisting his body to barely dodge the deadly extended blade. He jerks into the air and completely evades the attack, while in motion carefully studies the opponent's weapon and realizes it is a blade that extends. He understood that keeping distance was pointless, so he decided to force the fight up close. He rushed forward and noticed the unusual structure of the weapon. It was made of segments. As he rushes forward, Fult's bristles stand on end. This confirms that the weapon is called Synopede. The segmented blade hovers in the air and forms an almost impenetrable barrier. The hero realizes that magic controls its smooth, serpentine movements, and Fult urges him, ordering the boy to draw his sword. In response, he decisively draws his own weapon, raises the blade, and names himself Alta Shwites, and the sword Blue Shell Sword, a family relic of his house. With this, he declares his intention to fight. His opponent's face contorted into a mask of mad delight, as if demanding Alta to entertain him well. With a roar, he releases Synopede. A huge piece of the blade crashes down with a rumble onto Alta. Alta avoids the blow, but the relentless pressure deprives him of freedom of action. He realizes he cannot close the distance because the opponent is strangely cautious, and the attempt to cut the threads connecting the blade segments is futile, and this is mockingly confirmed by the fact itself. Then it reveals the secret of the strength of his weapon. The threads are woven from dragon hair, the strongest of all monster materials. To make them even more durable, he pours his own magical power into them. Alta processes this information and, feeling the challenge before him, concludes that this will be a prolonged battle, but his opponent has no intention to wait and growls, accelerating his attacks. She holds his position while the segmented blade whistles in the air, twisting and striking like a metal snake. Fult Misina, with a crazy smile, spins the weapon, forcing the opponent to switch to a purely defensive stance under a barrage of blows. The force of the strike sparks fly. Alta's sword clashes again and again with the lightning-fast striking segments of the centipede blade. Despite the relentless barrage, he calmly assesses the situation, mentally notes what a vile weapon it is, and also the thought spins in his head that the repair costs for the training ground will most likely be deducted from his salary. The opponent gloats, claiming that he is the one pressing the attack, but at the same time, puzzled aloud, wonders how Alta manages to fend off this barrage of attacks. Alta Maintina sleeps Kofi Dang Mail. He mentally tells himself that although he pities the opponent, these attacks will not hit him. Quiet confidence in the guilt of Rage, who growls at him to stop joking. He feels that he is pushing with all his might but does not understand why his attacks do not penetrate. In response, he simply says that he does not want the opponent to get even more carried away, and pressing his foot to the ground, adds that it is time to get to work. Suddenly, his facial expression changes from irritation to wide-eyed shock, then distorts into a triumphant mannequin. He roars, convinced that he has finally found a gap. I got you. He swung his weapon, a mad chain of metal segments spinning maniacally. The links tore the stone floor, but his opponent Alta moved with unnatural calm, stepping right into the path of the attack. The chain fell on him, smashing the ground, and shards of stone flew in all directions. But the cry of pain that sounded was not from Althus. Volt froze in horror as his own hand crumbled into black powder. Flesh and bones simply vanished. He howled in pain and disbelief, while Alta, completely unharmed, stood over him and with a cold voice full of rage demanded to know how Folt dared to do that. The centipede suddenly burrowed into the ground, and Folt could not understand it. It was impossible for Alta to have cut the magical thread that controlled it. Lying on the ground, Alta raised his head and looked up with quiet satisfaction on his face, confirming to himself that his plan had finally worked. He began to tell about the true nature of his power. His blue blade had a built-in magical effect. Folt's blade passed magical power through itself, so Alti's sword became the perfect counter for him. He discovered that every time his sword activates, it accumulates false mana poison that neutralizes magic and immobilizes the target. Having explained everything, he pointed the blade at the fallen swordsman. Folt Miss Cinta, he declared, his voice leaving no room for objections, you are under arrest. Folt was stunned and could not utter a word. Alta explained that the process took so long simply because of the enormous length of Folt's weapon, and now that he was subdued, Alta informed him that he had many questions that needed answers. A weak, defiant laugh escaped from Folt's lips. Alta calmly advised him to cease resistance, warning that if he continued, he would lose the other hand. Folt's gaze sharpened and a slight smile appeared on Alta's lips as he observed the opponent's determination. For a knight, he breathes heavily, standing in a black puddle that was once his hand, yet his eyes still blaze with defiance. In a hoarse, strained voice, he says he has not been defeated yet. Before he could make another move, his body exploded with a powerful fountain of black liquid, splashes scattering across the cobblestones and shocking those present. When the shock subsides, the gaze of the young swordsman involuntarily rises to the neighboring roof, where against the sky stands a silhouette emitting a barely noticeable aura. A mysterious figure in a dark cloak with a hood and a strange mask looks down from their height. The one who meets their gaze stands with a sword at the ready and wonders to himself, could this be the third? To the night sky, another one in a cloak from the swordsman gang steps out against Alti. He recognizes the familiar cloak. The attacker pulls out a glowing orb and it suddenly explodes with a blinding flash of light. The light fades, the attacker lies dead on the cobblestones. Alta stands over the body and notices that the others have fled. He assumes that the man was eliminated. Probably he was the person so hated that no one would come to his aid. For a moment he thinks of rushing into pursuit, but his blood-splattered face firmly seals his decision. He cannot risk moving away from Iris even for the sake of one more enemy. Rejecting this thought, he approaches the academy dormitory and calls Iris, fully aware that students are forbidden to leave their rooms at this hour. The door opens and Iris Reinfeld comes out. With anxiety on her face, she says she went outside to make up for the training time she lost earlier in the day. Her explanation was interrupted when she finally saw him clearly. His eyes widened from the blood on his face and suddenly everything became clear. She asked with shock in her voice if he was a knight, and he simply confessed he was exposed. Later, when the tension subsided, Alto washes the blood from his face near the street fountain, and Iris sits on a nearby bench silently watching him. He stood opposite her, cloak thrown over his arm, revealing a simple white tunic, and said it was time to truly introduce himself. He is a first-class officer of the Serious Order of Black Knights. Iris processes what she heard and asks if he is the same one rumored about 2 years ago, the youngest knight. He confirms and adds that he is also her secret protector at the academy. Iris Reinfeld digests the revelation with a grim expression and quietly mutters that now she understands everything. She realizes that the academy must have known about the danger from the very beginning. She sits next to Alta on the bench and understands that the assassination plan is still ongoing, and that she was the only one who did not know about it. He turns to her and sincerely apologizes for not being able to share this information earlier. She quietly accepted his apology, brushing it off, saying it's okay, it's just work, and confessed that she is actually the target of that swordsman's game. But her calm instantly sharpens into a challenge. Her face becomes firm. She insists that a protector is not needed. Belsan died to protect her. My mind pulls me back again to that conversation with Alta and Bel Trousseau. In the memory, she asks Bel if he is familiar with Alta. He explained that Alta was the person he fought and lost to in the final of the Kenjutsu tournament when he was 10. Bel added that after that, Alta became a knight and a first-class officer, and this news clearly shocked Iris. The memory ignites her current anxiety. She trembles slightly, repeating again that she was given a protector, then turns to Alta and sharply asks why he is so against it. She looks at her, puzzled, asking if something is wrong. Iris looks away, embarrassed, realizing her mistake. For a moment she thought she would finally hear the reason why Bel is against it, not Altus. Her face hardened with determination, and she proclaimed her true dream to become a protector, like her father Gallo Reinfeld. Upon hearing the name Alta, she responds that although she never met her father, she knew of him as the former commander of the formidable Order of the Black Knights, and Iris quietly confirms, yes, I knew him. She explains that her father, as the head of the family and a knight, was a defender of his people, and to honor his will, she swears that she will not lose to anyone. Returning to the path ahead, she said with renewed determination that if she is the target of the swordsman gang, she will face them head-on, and added that she wouldn't mind if Alta went with her to finish them off. He watches her and thinks that for a 15-year-old, her determination is impressive, although the fact that she is a crown contender explains her strength. He cannot shake the feeling that danger hovers around her. Deciding to dig deeper, he asked to confirm just one thing. He noted that as far as he knows, her father's killer has not yet been caught. His words hit right at the heart, and Iris froze, eyes wide with shock. He insists, directly asking if she wants to become stronger to avenge her father's killer. But her bold mask cracks. She lowers her eyes and, with pain on her face, quietly admits that she was only about 5 years old when it happened. She recalls the most precious childhood memory, how she adored training fencing with her father, Galloway, and fell as soon as he returned from service. As a little girl, she beamed with a smile, holding a training sword and soaring alongside her tall, armored father. He was the strongest knight in the kingdom, in her eyes a proud, admirable figure. She remembers running through their most luxurious estate, calling him and eagerly awaiting the start of their training. That idyllic memory was instantly shattered by a sudden brutal attack. In despair, her father shielded her small body while a whirlwind of dark energy erupted around them, and she could only scream his name, overwhelmed with horror because he put her protection above all else. The moment after that etched itself into her memory. Warm blood splattered on her face and her eyes darted in confused horror. After the devastating blow, her father lay defeated on the ground, nearby a broken sword, and above his fallen body loomed a shadowy figure. The figure spoke, contempt dripping from his words. He considered it boring that Gallo left a hole in the defense just to protect his daughter and called her a little girl. He continued, saying that her father spared her, and then the killer coldly asked that next time they meet, she entertain him instead of her father. Having spoken those last words, the shadowy man turned and walked away, leaving Gallo Reinfeld's body lying in a pool of his own blood. The memory of that day remained a harsh, burning image. The fallen body of the father sent broken swords into the air, and her face a mask of pure horror, twisted in a silent, endless frame. Returning to the present, this torment petrified into an irritated grimace, and before everyone's eyes Iris confesses that she does not remember the face of the killer. She continues, telling that even after 10 years they still do not know who the killer is or where he might be. But her determination is unwavering. She will not give up the goal of becoming a knight who surpasses her father. Having said this, she turned to her sensei. An uncertainty appeared in her voice. She asked him if seeking revenge was the wrong path. Her eyes widen with despair. She insists, her voice trembling, isn't it right to seek revenge for her father? He looks on, his face revealing nothing. Inside, he admits to himself that he cannot read others' feelings and never imagined how heavy a burden she carried. Thoughts race wildly. He promised to teach her but has taught nothing yet, and now he ponders what to say because he knows she needs this teaching to take revenge. Finally, he turns back to her, decision made. He says that, in his opinion, everything is fine. Her eyes widen in surprise. A quiet moan escapes her lips as she processes his unexpected approval. On the training field, Iris Reinfeld approached Alta and her voice trembling with uncertainty, asked if she could search for something. He simply replied, yes, prompting her to say directly whether it was about revenge. He says, you need a reason to become stronger, it doesn't matter which. Whether to protect like a knight or to gain strength for revenge, the motivation itself is important. Seeing her inner struggle, he notices that she was surely certain he would oppose her desire. He says if she thinks it is wrong, then some part of herself thinks so too. It is this self-disgust and hesitation, he says, that hinder her growth as a swordswoman. Her face tenses as she asks if she should simply give up the desire to avenge her father's killer. She perceives his words as an order to just discard this feeling, but he explains that the decision is ultimately hers. His gaze sharpens as he says the main thing, make the strike precisely for this and with all your strength. She must fully accept her motivation to become stronger. This is exactly what he means. In response to his powerful statement, Iris freezes, lowers her head, her face covered with a shadow of thoughts and inner struggle. She cannot answer immediately. After a moment, his voice becomes stern and instructive. He says that as her teacher, he would advise her not to strike with the sword for revenge. The hut on the training ground, Iris stands opposite him with closed eyes. As she grips the hilt of her wooden sword, a dark, thorny aura begins to thicken around the blade, the physical embodiment of her turbulent emotions. She swung the blade with new determination, the steel sliced through the air in an arc, and if she had to choose, she decided to take the sword in her hands to protect those dear to her. He looked at her and suddenly realized, for Iris the most important thing is to apply cider douse. And indeed, she succeeded. The blade now glowed with a pure bright light, and a triumphant relief blossomed on her face. She turned to him decisively, declared that she was not going to run away, and asked what he was going to do next, confessing that she had not noticed he was new. At his arrival, she firmly said that she would stay at the academy. He clarified that he was staying too, but not as a guard. He would become her instructor. He smiled slightly and said that she still needed guidance. After all, she was inexperienced. Moreover, he believed that she would need a teacher for sword fighting. After a minute of hesitation, she reluctantly agreed to let him continue their training. He accepted her decision with a joyful smile. While they were walking, he took the moment and asked her, "Why are you waving the sword?" When she seemed surprised, he explained why he himself fights, because he wants to live carefree, and this reason completely embarrassed her. She burst out laughing, her eyes tightly shut from amusement, certain that the stated reason for the fight was just a joke. Going further, she thinks, if I can become as strong as Sensei for myself, the path ahead will not be difficult. He asks if her motivation is childish, and she firmly replies that it is not at all. His gaze involuntarily falls on the damaged territory of the academy. He mentally understands with the two remaining members of the swordsman gang, this incident can no longer be concealed. Later that night, he stood alone and looked at the academy from afar, thought about the one who escaped, and hoped that those pursuing him would succeed. At that moment, a cry rang out. They noticed a figure in a hood running through the dark courtyards. Two figures rushed down a narrow alley. Their hurried steps scatter sparks on the stone pavement. Their escape route was cut off. At the end of the alley stands Commander Lamur, and around him is a whole company of soldiers blocking every passage. She looks down arrogantly at the fugitive, cornered with a confident smile, and says that they were informed about an uninvited person who fled from the academy, so it must be Vash. She stood her ground, looking at the silent figure in the hood. One of her squad commanders shouted "Commander" to her, but she raised her hand and ordered him not to move. She declared she would decide this herself. The figure responded not with words, but with a quiet giggle, drawing a strange, ornate hilth. They noted with a smile that the commander herself came out to greet them. When they spoke, the figure threw back the hood and revealed a woman with long pale hair and 3 dots on her forehead. Lamur's eyes narrowed with rage. He recognized that strange, bladeless saber, and she spat the name of that woman with contempt, Fist Midden of the Sword Gang. Her voice dripped with venom as a fiery aura exploded around her, and she directly accused Fist, demanding to know if she was the one who killed her dear subordinate. Confrontation exploded instantly. Waves of destructive energy tore through the street, shattering windows and crumbling wooden structures. Amid the chaos, Fist Maiden calmly admitted that she did not like feudal fights, although she acknowledged that causing a fuss was also a hassle. With a single light wrist movement, a dazzling blade of pure energy burst forth from the previously empty hill. When two warriors rushed towards each other, their blades clashed in the very center of the ruined street. A deafening strike sent shock waves through the air. When the soldiers were preparing to advance, their squad commander roared, ordering them to stop and not to chase. Lamur, who was in the clash, knew, if her opponent had unleashed the full power of that sword right in the city center, the consequences would have been catastrophic. She stood firm and demanded a report from her people. The squad commander confirmed the good news: the civilians were unharmed, and her men had suffered no losses either. But when the tip of her sword clanged against a stone underfoot, a wave of irritation washed over her, and she quietly whispered a curse, looking at the distant silhouette of Fishmaden standing among his soldiers. The next day, announcements appeared near the gates of the Riflemen's Academy. After everyone learned about the sword gang attack, the school was closed until further notice. At the gates of Alta School, as a teacher, he dismissed the worried students, assuring them that Iris was fine and that everyone should go home. But Arya froze in place, her face filled with anxiety for Iris Salmo. For several minutes, Iris and Alta stood side by side on the balcony, silently looking at the now empty schoolyard below. The appearance of Arya interrupted the moment. She suggested that she could also go home, but everyone immediately stopped her. He declared that he could not leave Arya alone with the person who deceived her. Arya, with a firm gaze, resolutely refused to go. She turned to Iris and spoke in a quiet voice. Arya explained that last night she made everyone tell her everything. Iris looked at her, and a thought crept into her mind: was it the right thing to do? He confirmed that Iris now knows he is a knight. With lowered eyes, Iris quietly apologized, but Arya quickly reassured her. It's nothing, it's okay, I knew this would happen as soon as he was exposed, and she smiled, adding that now she can stay close to Iris. Even the support seemed to push Iris. Her face tightened with determination, and turning directly to Alta, she said that although it might be hasty, her training must begin immediately. Arya exclaimed joyfully with a stained face, noting that Iris finally learned to cut a leaf. This remark, a clear hint at a stage in training, embarrassed and angered Iris, while Arya simply sighed contentedly as if she had caught up with her friend in something. She immediately takes back her words when Arya suggests they arrange a duel. He intervenes, asks why not, reminds that before his arrival they dueled every day, says he would gladly watch himself. Iris blushed and could not find words. She only thinks, and her hesitation melts away. With new determination, she draws her sword. The blade rings as it bursts from the scabbard. In the forest clearing, she took a stance opposite Arya, who mirrored her readiness, while Alta watched from afar as the two prepared to start. With a shout, Arya rushes forward, beginning a rapid exchange of strikes. Their blades clash in a whirl of movement, steel ringing against steel. She presses the attack, movements quick and precise. Finding a gap, she shouts victory as her blade hits the target. But Iris does not retreat. Her sword held the blow. Arya's eyes widened in surprise. She realizes, in their previous fights, this strike would have been decisive. The duel froze, their blades locked in a tense confrontation, and Arya stares, was stunned by the unexpected strength and defense of Iris. She smiled brightly and asked if that meant the victory was hers. Arya, with an expression of quiet reconciliation, admitted that she had lost. Arya, in a gesture of sportsmanship, extends her hand and gently pats Iris on the head, acknowledging that she had become a bit stronger than before. Her friendly gesture made Iris blush with embarrassment and whisper for her to stop. Arya explained that Iris always does the same to her, and she just wanted to reciprocate to pull her out of her usual sleepy mood. While the head patting continues, Iris protests that such behavior is inappropriate in front of their sensei, and nearby Alta watches them with a thoughtful expression. He finally understood. The sword princess already had the perfect training partner, because Iris's ability to react to attacks from a blind spot was a direct result of her exercises with the sixth sense. Her face radiated newly gained confidence and sharp focus, a stark contrast to how she usually looked. He mentally decided that this was just one of the basic conditions to fight seriously with him, and believed that she had passed the first stage of training, learning to avoid hidden attacks similar to his own invisible technique. He looked at Iris, and new power seemed to glow within her, and he realized this training was vital. It would give a stubborn girl like her a better chance to survive. He announced that it was time to move on to the next stage of training, and Iris and Arya enthusiastically agreed, ready for whatever awaited ahead. While they prepared, all eyes were drawn to the sword at his hip. She asked if he intended to use it, but he explained that he would not fight with that blade. Instead, another exquisite sword appeared in his hand, shining with powerful energy. He told Iris that her soul's task was to block his strikes, and she was very surprised by this. He warns that he will speed up and asks her to do everything possible to defend herself. Iris agrees with a determined look and relies on him during the lesson. The duel begins instantly. Iris reacts lightning fast, raising her blade to parry his first powerful strike. Their swords are still locked. He mentally says that this basic speed is nothing for him. He says that a one-on-one fight actually works in her favor, announces the start of the second speed phase, and Iris's face hardens with concentration. She declares the next move is a series of 5 strikes. Iris shouts agreement at the very moment the first strike hits the opponent's defensive stance. He intensified the attack. Has materialized, as if blurred silhouette exploded with a rapid 5-strike combo, and Iris met each strike with focused determination with her blade. Their blades clashed in the final loud collision. Catching her breath, Iris confirmed that this was truly the end of the series. She looked surprised when he apologized and admitted that he actually wanted to go all the way, and he quickly smiled and reassured her that what she did was quite enough for a start. When the session ended, another student came out. Arya raised her hand and confidently declared that it was now her turn. She approached him, ready for her trial. All the techniques she controlled withstood a series of 3 strikes, and she suggested continuing to 5. Without hesitation, he launched an attack and sent the same lightning-fast 5-strike combo toward Arya, and Iris, watching from the side, saw with surprise. Arya perfectly parried every strike. The flawless performance stunned Iris for a moment. She covered her face with her hand and could not believe her eyes. She regretted that Arya had once again outpaced her, and the brown-haired Arya, with a smug shrug, seemed to enjoy it. He carefully watched their reactions and explained what was going on. Arya defended so well because she had seen this technique before. However, he praised Iris, noting how amazing it was that she managed to do it without any prior knowledge. Now that he was convinced they were on the same level, the real training began. Then he shouted another challenge for Iris and Arya to attack him simultaneously. This idea suddenly caught Iris off guard, and she asked again if he really meant an attack at the same time. He confirmed his intentions with a confident smile and added that even if the two of them manage to oppose him, he does not care. He said without any doubt that he will cope. Their faces were petrified with grim determination. Arya, turning to her rival Bertoran, said, "Let's begin, Iris," and Iris resolutely replied, "Yes," gripping her sword tightly. 2 students rushed forward, flanking the instructor, who stood his ground without retreating. As they prepared to strike, a thought flashed through his mind. Seeing people grow truly pleased him, and he realized he did not hate teaching. Indeed, being a teacher was not bad at all. All 3 stood ready for the clash, their faces showing deep, intense concentration. After training, Alta praised the student for excellent work and announced a 1-hour break. Walking away with a smile, he thought how pleasant it was to help those young people who truly strive to grow, but his thoughts were abruptly interrupted by the call of Commander Lamur. It was time to seriously discuss what to do next. In the reception room, she immediately asks about his hand, worried that one more move in that last fight could leave him without it, and Riley adds that this is the price for spending so much time at the desk. He brushed off her worry, saying he was fine, but bitterly admitted they still hadn't managed to catch the target. Changing the subject, he advised her to drink a little less, which she categorically refused. Despite his remark, Lumiere immediately gets to work. She shows a photo of their previous enemy Fist Maden and announces that they have now identified 2 more key participants in the sword game. She tells in detail based on records and eyewitness testimonies about another attacker. A swordswoman with a bladeless sword. She only saw a faint trajectory line, and honestly tells Alta that she could not possibly guess what those attacks were like. Lamur presents 2 profiles. The first, Adele Gratz, a former mercenary from war fronts, now number 1 and the strongest in the swordsman gang. The second, Fist Midden, the owner of the bladeless sword who cut off her hand and killed Folt, confirmed as number 2 of the gang. When everyone reviews the documents, he finds it strange that such a powerful team took on a 15-year-old girl, even if she is a candidate for the role of ruler. She apologizes for what happened and assumes that the band of swordsmen are simply killers who live for battle. She believes their motivation is probably connected to the fact that Iris Rainful holds the most powerful title, Holy Sword Princess, as people call her. Lamura puts a full stop in the briefing and says that this is all the information for now. She announces that it is time to come up with a plan for the future, and everyone lifts their eyes from the documents, ready to report their findings and start planning. He sat in a well-kept room, looked out the window, and called to make sure if Arya was there. Outside, beyond the window, Arya, not a single tree moved. He was stunned that he felt her presence when no one else ever did. Commander Owen, who stood nearby, shuddered and admitted that she had not noticed the girl at all, and then he at least asked the commander to do something for him. Now inside, Arya knelt by the window and he asked what she was doing there, admitting that it was strange how he himself had not noticed her for so long. She explained that she had seen him with the commander. She explained that Iris had taken an interest and that pushed her to investigate, and he instantly persuaded her not to reveal what she had found out. It was then that Iris Reinfeld appeared in the doorway, and to his own surprise, Arya beckoned her to come inside. When the group gathered in the room, Commander Owen solemnly greeted Lady Reinfeld, noting that a lot of time had passed. Iris in turn nodded back at her. Iris did not hesitate. She directly asked if the commander's wounds were inflicted by the swordsman gang, and Lamur. Owen looked away with a pained expression and apologized, explaining that it was a shameful matter and her duties did not allow her to say a proper goodbye. Then he took the briefing into his own hands and announced to the gathered group that the remaining enemies were two of the strongest assassins from the swordsman gang. He stated that among the serious Black Knights only he could oppose them, but warned, "No one knows when or how the enemy will strike next time." Commander Owen suddenly appeared before her and shouted his name in rage. She feels that Iris already knows that he is a knight, and stunned, he can only confirm it. Looking away from the commander's anger, he turned back to Iris. Her face was grim, and he directly asked what she was going to do now. She answers calmly and decisively, addressing the commander, first saying that she aims to stop any further harm and primarily protect the members of the order. The commander listens, her face hardens. Determination grows in Iris, and she lays out her plan. She suggests luring the enemy to a place where no civilians will be harmed and says they should consider it her base. The commander lowers her gaze, her voice softens, apologizes for the failed order that led to such a proposal, and admits that she is deeply touched that Iris is still willing to cooperate with her, even though it costs her dearly. But the brief moment of humility disappears, replaced on her face by a fierce look, and she shouts that she completely disagrees with this plan. His refusal hung in the air, and with a burden in his heart he realized the difficult position it put him in. He could not tell Iris that he had infiltrated there under the cover of an instructor, so Nercuti told her everything because the commander insisted that she not be involved. Awareness clarifies the current confrontation. He understands that the only way forward is for Iris herself to convince the commander to accept her strategy. He looked at Commander Owen with firm determination and, answering her question, said that he had already decided to become a knight in the future. Inspired by his determination, Iris Reinfeld stood firm, her voice ringing with confidence. She declared that she was not afraid to give her own life to protect another, and if someone was ready to become a sacrifice for her, then it was enough for her that only she would be the sacrifice. Commander Owen froze, struck by the passionate words of the young woman. He immediately begged her not to speak like that, explained that if she died, all the sacrifices of those who gave their lives to protect her would be in vain, insisted that people are meant to live, and added that he himself was not going to die. Her face froze with determination. "That is why I will fight," said Iris, and her gaze did not waver even before Commander Owen watched her. While this was happening, her friend stepped forward resolutely in solidarity. Arya did not allow her to go into battle alone, and another companion immediately embraced this idea. The sudden intervention stunned Commander Owen, who demanded to know who they were. Iris began to explain that one of them was from the Reinfeld family. The girl with braids proudly introduced herself as Arya, boasting about her beautiful name. She hugged Iris by the shoulders and declared that Iris was like family to her, so protecting her was self-evident, and Alta quietly remarked to the commander that many of her students were true heroes, but these two were a special case. Then he looked at the two girls, realizing that he had already seen their skill with the sword, and asked if any of them possessed any special magic. She and Commander Owen watch as if enchanted, as Iris's friends demonstrate their abilities. One releases crackling lightning bolts and the other, Arya, spins dark, swirling energy around herself. He feels this is exactly the power he needs. Turning back to the commander with a confident smile, he said that the girls clearly have enough strength to cooperate with him, solemnly accepted Iris's offer, and announced that he himself would take up swordplay. Commander Owen's expression brightens, but she sharply replies that such a plan is unbecoming of a person with the rank of Knight Commander. Nearby, Iris listens with a worried look. Her stern face softens a little as she continues. She admits that having heard so many resolute words, she cannot simply stop someone so ready for their deed. Arya's face lit up. She warmly thanks the commander and exclaims that among everyone, she is the most humane. The plan is approved. He moves on to tactics and addresses the commander. warns of a possible attack the next day, and suggests spreading the information that Iris has been moved to a safer place. Owen agrees and adds that this will buy them a few days. Commander Owen gives the final orders. The decisive day of the bait operation will come next Saturday. Until then, she orders everyone to prepare. Iris's companion responds with a resolute yes. He turns his attention to Iris and calmly asks if she will go on a date with him. The question completely catches her off guard. Her face reddens, she stammers, and cannot comprehend anything. She apologized, agreeing to meet again in an hour, and quietly closed the door behind her. As they walked, Arya detailed the plan, her voice sharper with intent. On Saturday, they will secretly lure the enemy out, pretending to be two ordinary children just walking, and that meant Iris would have to go on a date with Alta-sensei. The word date hit Iris like a blow. She doubted whether it was really necessary, but Arya explained that the enemy does not know their names, so the action must look convincing. An embarrassed Iris tried to justify it, saying it was just part of the plan, and Alta's remark was just a joke. She restrained herself and did not get angry, but her lack of experience in such matters clearly worried her. Seeing how her friends were suffering, Arya proposed a simple solution. She said it was no big deal if she just pretended. Then she asked Iris what she thought to do and left the choice to her. She walked alone, deep in thought, striving to become a knight with a strength worthy of the title of Holy Sword Princess. She always believed that she had no time for personal matters like love. That is why she knew so little about such things. The burden of duties and this unexpected new role weighed on her, and she silently wished for even a moment of peace. Standing before the majestic arch, Commander Lamur Owen said with a bitter smile about the absurdity of it all, and I loudly joked that I was going on a date with a high school senior amid such tension. She turned to Alta's Whites with a sly smile and said that he himself was not so innocent. He, irritated, sharply replied that he was doing it for the plan and asked if she had ever paid attention to him before. The commander sighed quietly, admitting that although she had been reliable, her arrogance and own skills led to this, and she directly told Alta that he had chosen the wrong enemy. Hearing this, Alta was enlightened. He realized that from the very beginning of the mission, she planned to make him overly concerned about sword-sent Princess Iris Reinfeld. Her face hardened as she formally named him First Officer Alta Vates. She asked a direct question: could he protect Lady Reinfeld from the band of swordsmen? He answered with unwavering confidence, "Of course, a leader must play his role, stand straight and proud, but with one condition: he will take an additional 30 of the salary for this trouble." Her stern look melted into a warm smile as she admitted that she liked that side of him. Nearby Belved Trousseau laughed, adding that Iris was the daughter of the previous Commander Gallo, and that Alta was once under his care. She jokingly suggested going on a date after the mission. Alta, embarrassed, protested the age difference would be a problem and asked if she was too harsh on him. Lamur instantly changed the subject, asking about the investigation into who hired Swordgesh. She had to admit, although she roughly knew who was behind the attacks, no solid evidence was found, and it was also noted that the suspect could not be lightly summoned for confrontation. But when she pointed to one of the most powerful Ziltillic, it turned out that he was the son of King William Tillic, ruler of their native kingdom Galdia. He reviewed the information, eyes wide open, and realized that the prince of their country was targeting Iris. He noted that this was quite an important name to be involved. In another corner among the towering spires of the royal castle, a meeting was taking place. Two figures in cloaks approached the checkpoint, and the palace guard sharply ordered them to stop and remove their masks, but even before they could comply, another guard intervened and shouted to his comrade, "Wait. Approach and sincerely apologize to those silent masked ones for the rudeness, and explain to your partner that these are the prince's personal guards." They were let in, and the two figures found themselves before a man sitting in a magnificent hall. He coldly said that it would be better for them not to come there if it could be avoided. The man, Prince Ziltilloc, continued the report and admitted that the band of swordsmen, as believed, could kill anyone for the right price, even the holy sword. Although two of theirs had already been killed, he saw no reason to worry and even seemed somewhat amused that only a 12-year-old boy was causing him problems. He fiercely demands that the guards be silent. One of them had just asked about the whereabouts of the princess the holy sword, but the prince, enraged, shouts that the bastard from the stern Black Knights refused to share any information. His rage stems from an old grudge. He remembers how that brat humiliated him at the last tournament and decisively orders the guards, "Next time you meet her, finish off the holy sword princess." A cruel smile spreads across his face as he adds a more malicious detail to the order. They are not just ordered to kill her, they must make her feel the terror of death as intensely as possible before killing her. He turns away from his guards and defiantly declares that peace and quiet are boring. The prince reveals his true ambitions. As soon as she dies, like her father, he will become the next king of the country and will have such power that he can use well. His ambitions are not limited to one country. He announces that he will become the king who will rule the continent, turns back to his subordinates, and reminds them that he sent them to protect him, expecting them to properly fulfill their duty. Having received the order, 2 masked guards silently stood on the cliff, gazing at the sprawling castle and the land below. Somewhere else, 2 discuss the character of the prince. A stocky man with a white beard says he has long known Prince Zil is unfit to be king, but adds that this very weakness makes him easy to control, and the long-haired leader nearby seems to agree. The leader agreed, confirming the assessment, and the bearded executor predicted that if a person like Prince Zil ascends the throne, it will inevitably cause a great rebellion across the continent. A smile spread across the leader's face. He began to see in this chaos an opportunity, as the continent would become an ideal and pleasant hunting ground for their squads. The leader of the swordsman gang stood in the cave and, glancing at his comrade, admitted that losing 2 people before the hunt was over was an unpleasant blow. The leader acknowledged that Azuma's death was a pointless loss and added that, unlike Fult, Azuma had his merits. His large, white-haired companion stated that ultimately it fell to him to take care of the sword princess. He sadly reflected on her fate, a poor girl from a noble family who was to be made king, although she did not even try to resist. The leader was surprised to notice that the subordinate was so keenly interested in her. The large man simply said there was a good reason for that, and seriousness was felt in his tone. The conversation was instantly interrupted when a knight in full armor appeared before them and called the giant by name Adelgratz from the Swords gang. He was not alone. Beltruso stood at the head of a squad of soldiers who completely surrounded the 2 members of the Sword gang and, raising his voice, announced that he was taking them into custody. In response, Adelgrat with a dramatic movement drew his huge, curved blade, and the leader of the swordsman gang calmly suggested they join forces, saying that together they would free the poor girl. His face twisted into a wild grin as he fiercely looked at the gathered knights and contemptuously called them miserable freaks. The scene changes. On the so-called Sabbath day, Alta stands ready, hand on the sword hilt. He is told that the destination is already secure. Knights are posted around the perimeter, and he says, "I am ready to go." He stood at the foot of the stone structure, thinking about Iris's safety, and was confident that if the worst happened, she could quite well stand against the swordsman gang. Suddenly, a voice came from above, apologizing for the delay. The voice belonged to Iris. She appeared not in her usual form, but in simple clothes, and explained that she had been persuading Arya for a long time. He asked if there was some problem, but then smiled and said it was nice to see her in different attire and it suited her, and Iris, embarrassed, awkwardly thanked him. Just then, Arya Natria appeared behind Iris in a dark official uniform, politely greeted her sensei with good morning, and then turned to Iris with a determined expression and said it was time to go. His gaze lingered on Arya's outfit. He noticed her posture and how the uniform fit, and instantly guessed that a weapon was hidden under the clothes. When the 3 set off, Arya indignantly asked why she had to go with them if she was told she would only help with the organization. He added that he had no other clothes except knight's armor and a cassock, while Iris, on the contrary, was delighted, cheerfully saying everything was fine and calling it a day for the 3 of them. He chuckled at how Iris called him, comparing himself to a person holding flowers in both hands. This only irritated Arya more. She shouted at her sensei in protest, and Iris's face became serious when she intervened and said that if Arya could not accompany them, then she herself would not go. The frivolous mood instantly evaporated. His face hardened. He raised one finger and silenced them, sternly warning both girls not to overdo it because the situation had changed. Now one strike could cost them their lives. The words hung in the air. I was troubled that he could say something so grim so easily, but Arya met the warning with determination and simply replied firmly, "All right." As they prepared to set off, Iris turned to Arya with a worried face and ordered, "If it becomes dangerous, run immediately." Arya stood firm and said that she herself was the target of the swordsman gang and was not going to retreat right away. Her face froze. She quietly whispered a grim oath and decided to cut down everyone who threatened Iris. Motherly affection intrigued Iris. She asked what she had said, but Arya waved it off as nothing. Then Iris transferred her anxiety to Alta and also asked him to be careful. These words caught him by surprise. He suddenly realized that a long time had passed since someone had sincerely worried about him. He pulled himself together and clearly outlined the next step of their plan. Since the final point was already determined, he suggested making a detour to attract the enemy's attention and asked the girls if there was a place they wanted to go. As soon as this was offered to her, Iris's mood immediately improved. She eagerly asked for permission to go buy herself some clothes, and Alta gladly agreed. He returned to Arya and asked if she knew any shops. Arya smiled and replied that she had a few in mind and agreed to show them. When they decided where to go, three headed to the bustling city street teeming with merchants and buyers. The plan to conquer the swordbearer gang officially began. Three approach a noisy clothing store, and its entrance brightly glows against the backdrop of the evening street. Next, Iris and Arya immediately get to work. They bring a white shirt with ruffles to the tired-looking Alti. Iris says it suits him and comes in other colors, while Arya thoughtfully suggests that the calmer color might look better. Arya, surprised, turned to him saying "Sensei," making Iris quickly explain that it was just a nickname for Altica, and she looked at him for confirmation, but he seemed to disagree and muttered that they just came to buy clothes. She comes closer with a gentle smile, says that she heard supposedly he has no clothes except his robe, and then asks if he would mind if she picks out a few things for him. Without waiting for an answer, she boldly says that he can leave it to her and that she will also pick out clothes for Ari. Alta can only sign the resignation letter. He froze between two giggling girls, and it was clear he felt very uneasy, although it was all for the sake of their plan. The agreement continues. Arya displays a ruffled black dress with a hood and cat ears and asks his opinion. He can only point out the obvious. Isn't this for girls? Turning away from Arya's offer, he sees Iris holding a more practical military uniform, thinks it will suit her, and says it's a good choice, while Iris reproaches him for not even looking carefully, and Arya sulks in the background. Her option was rejected. She, blushing slightly, shyly says she will go to the cashier to pay for the purchases. Alta, clutching her choice in her hands, sincerely tells her that he is very happy with the clothes she chose for him, believing that this will be more than enough. She steps away in the new outfit. She finally looks like an ordinary 15-year-old girl, and he imagines how her classmates will definitely be surprised to see her like this. Leaving the shop, he sees Iris and Arya waiting, and his thoughts return to the first meeting with them. Back then one was serious, like a noble girl, and the other carefree. He realizes that both have come a long way since then. Arya returns to him and asks where Iris is. He waves his hand toward the shop and says that Iris is still behind the counter. Her gaze fixed on him as she asks if he cares about Iris. Alta formally replies that as a knight he intends to protect the one entrusted to his escort. She instantly rejects his explanation, saying that this is not what she meant. Embarrassed, he offers another reason. He is her mentor, but Arya rejects that too. Her face becomes stern. With passionate determination, Arya says, "I protect Iris simply because she is herself, and that is the main difference between me and Alta." She explains that Iris wants to protect everyone, Arya, Alta, and everyone else. It is this willingness to sacrifice herself. Arya admits with a painful expression that this worries her terribly. She finished her thought and resolutely said that is exactly why she intends to protect Iris, then begs Alta, as her teacher, to also take care of her protection. Just then Iris comes out of the shop and joyfully announces that everything is ready. Everyone thanks her for her patience. While the two girls walk ahead, Iris cheerfully says she enjoyed the walk, and he keeps pondering Arya's words. The request to focus on her protection is hard for him to accept. He immediately understood her hint. Even if Arya herself is in danger, Iris must remain the priority. He felt ashamed how rude it was of him to think she was simple, and even if Arya does not say it, he knows. He is the eye. Duty is clear. He is Iris's guardian. Even if Arya is taken hostage, Iris's life is above all. The group steps onto the field of ancient ruins, crumbling, and Arya playfully jumps on the broken pillars. Iris says she is here for the first time, and Alta adds that he has been here before during his service. He explains why he came earlier, and his face tightens slightly. This place is known as a refuge for bandits. Suddenly it dawns on him. Earlier he wondered why the sword gang had not attacked the city, but now everything is clear. No concrete presence can be felt, yet he senses their eyes on them. They have been lured into a trap. She notices Iris's anxiety and asks if she is worried. Iris quietly admits that she is. His face hardens with determination. He understands that this is the perfect place to confront the sword gang and that their attack is inevitable. Meanwhile, Arya is consumed by fear. She blames herself for dragging her friends into this deadly situation and is terrified that they might not survive what lies ahead. And suddenly it occurs to him, he and Arya have already seen fights to the death, but for Iris this is the first real struggle for her life. As if sensing his thoughts, Iris looks at him with despair and asks how she can become as strong as he is. She admits that she wants to proclaim herself the Holy Sword Princess, before whom the gang would not stand, but she lacks confidence. He tells her directly, "You are already strong." He emphasizes that she could have done nothing and left the matter to the order, but instead she chose to fight. His words leave her stunned. He continues, explaining that recklessness is not the same as courage, and he believes the path she has chosen is true courage. He smiles reassuringly and tells her that if she feels this is a bad idea, she can leave everything to him. After all, that is exactly why he is here. A wave of relief washes over Iris and she smiles brightly, sincerely thanks him, and apologizes for the moment of weakness. She turns away from Alta and says that she is fine now. He looks at her, hesitating whether she is going to fight alone, and a moment of doubt flashes through his mind. Does he really not believe in her abilities? He shifts his gaze and surveys the courtyard of ruins. He notices that Arya is not there and wonders if she has already moved further away, hiding her presence, while Iris, noticing her friend's absence, calls her by name, worried and surprised. He instantly understands the situation. Arya found him first. A grim determination freezes on her face. She decides to focus solely on protecting Iris. Hiding behind a collapsed column, she realizes that although Iris is capable, she will still be nervous. Meanwhile, everyone tried to convince Iris to split up and search for the enemy, believing it would be better for her, but Iris categorically refused and reassured him. She always knows where he is, so there is no need to worry. When asked or while making the decision, pointing out that the enemies are probably where Arya is, Iris confirms her choice with a bright, confident expression without any hesitation. A few minutes earlier, the leader of Kankakashu, Fismidin, was sitting on a height, intently watching the students. He guessed correctly. The students were trying to lure them into a trap. Standing next to the formidable Adelgrats, Fisk does not hide his surprise. They expected the students to run and hide, but instead see a prepared battlefield, and Fisk notices with interest that the Sword Princess seems unarmed. The mercenary of Kinkakashu, Adelgrats, released a sharp, toothy smile, noticed that the students were brave, and said he would fight them personally, which, it seems, is exactly what they want. In another part of the ruins, Alta stood next to the Kinkakshu leader Fismidin, looking around the Rubelstrun territory, and asked where the other one had gone. In response, fists meet suddenly and smoothly, and their long light hair tears through the air as they react to an invisible threat. A hail of daggers cut through the air, but they were met by the weapons of Fistmeetins, and the projectiles bounced off a sharp metal lamp. The attack came from Arya Natria, standing ready in the distance. She watches as her assault is easily parried. From a higher point on the ruined wall, Alta observes the entire clash. When daggers rained down, Adelgrads approached, fist at the ready. He said he had long wondered why they interfered in the affairs of the Sword Saint Princess and the youngest knight, and added that he never imagined they would dare to surpass Kinkakashu. The initial attack failed. Arya's face turned to stone. She demands to know if they are mercenaries, then sharply asks what they did to Iris. Sitting high above everything, Alta looks down at the two Kinkakasha leaders, sees no one else is there, and resolutely says that if he kills them both right here the conflict will end, and asks if he is right. Travis Maiden shifts his gaze to the girl with two ponytails and first demands to know who she is, then sharply reproaches Adelgrads for getting excited at such a critical moment. The massive guard just snorts with satisfaction and praises their invisible enemies for excellent reconnaissance, while below Arya tightly grips her knives, her expression hardening with determination. In response, a dark feathery aura bursts from her back, folding into a cloak, and her simple knives transform into elegant curved blades. From his point of view, everyone screams her name in horror. Iris looks on anxiously. The Kinkakasha leaders observe this sudden metamorphosis, and one of them utters in a chilling word, "Killer." Pure shock freezes on Arya's face itself, as if she has no control over the power raging through her. The memory emerges clear as if it happened yesterday. Rain falls and spreads over the dark rooftops of the city, the sound of a constant dull hum. Downpour. A tiny, trembling girl with light hair pressed against a stone wall, soaked to the bone herself, while figures with umbrellas pass by without even glancing. Her loneliness is broken by a gentle voice. Under a bright yellow umbrella approaches a young girl, Iris Rin, her face concerned, and she asks the trembling child what she is doing here and if she is all right. She raises her eyes. Her red eyes meet Iris's gentle gaze. Iris smiles, introduces herself, and asks the other's name, and after a pause the girl quietly replies that her name is Natria. The scene sharply shifts to the present. Arya Natria stands ready opposite two members of Kinkakoshu, and their leader, Fis Miden, mockingly and contemptuously remarks on her audacity to call them killers in their presence. The merriment at the gathering instantly died out, replaced by icy determination. They called Arya a danger that cannot be left behind and passed a death sentence on her, and Arya's eyes widened with anxiety at this sudden intent to kill. Suddenly a fist lunged forward, the body turned into a blurred arrow of movement. Arya leans back and barely dodges the devastating blow that scatters the stone ruins where she stood just moments before. She spins in the air, barely dodging a series of invisible strikes that tear the stone floor apart, while the leader of Kinkakoshu watches with a calm expression and notes her impressive intuition. The unusualness of the attack was not entirely new to her. Iris Ryan fell into a dizzying fall and recalled what she had heard about this enemy. His sword was exactly as the rumors said. The leader stood amid the ruins, tense and ready, holding the source of the attack, the treadblade, in his hand. Another wave of invisible attacks surged forward, and although Arya could not see them with her eyes, she clearly felt their threatening presence, cutting sharply through the air. Deciding to respond, she hurled a small blade toward the enemy. Iris from her place knew it was pointless. There was no sense in throwing something directly at this person. Iris was right. The leader of Kinkakoshu simply raised his hand, and a vortex of shadows swirled around him, a display of spatial techniques. The dark abyss instantly swallowed the thrown knife, and it disappeared without a trace. Arya stood in shock and watched. The next moment, a long, sturdy blade appeared in the leader's hand, extending forward with a deadly intent. The leader calmly says that attacking from a blind spot at such speed is useless against their spatial magic. Arya looks with distrust, stunned that the opponent dodged so easily. She does not give up, unleashes a storm of daggers, and wonders herself if she will manage to stop this new attack, while her opponent stands calmly as dozens of dark, swirling vortices appear in the air around them. The whirlwinds instantly swallow each blade, completely nullifying the attack. She breathes heavily, sweat runs down her forehead, and she realizes she is powerless. The opponent, completely unharmed, mockingly asks if she has finished her attack. A few sharp clicks, and the stolen daggers reappear, now helplessly stuck in the ground around the leader. Watching the one-sided battle, Alta recalled Iris's strange behavior earlier that day, and his face hardened with grim realization he must kill this enemy. Meanwhile, Arya, though acknowledging the incredible strength of the adversary, grits her teeth, and her determination is unwavering. Her determination is fueled by a precious memory, the smiling face of Iris Reinfeld. She fights for the girl who accepted her as her own and gave her the very name she bears. But just as she gathers her spirit, a new threat emerges from the shadow behind. Enforcer Adelgratz raises his massive blade, preparing to strike her from behind. The Punisher swung his heavy blade downward, growling that he had no time to waste. The blow came from behind and completely caught Arya by surprise. She immediately understood. Escape was impossible. The ambush was lightning fast and powerful, leaving no chance for maneuver. But just as the blow was about to land, a dazzling flash of steel interrupted the heavy weapon. Iris Ryan fell and stood between them, her own blade restraining the Enforcers and their overwhelming assault. The Enforcer grumbled, his momentum completely extinguished. Iris held her position, her sword locked with his. Attention instantly focused on her friend lying on the ground, and with anxiety in her voice, Iris looked back at Arya and asked why she always puts herself in such dangerous situations. She turned back to the enemy, her gaze sharpened, apologized to Arya for worrying her, but assured that now everything was under control. Two fighters stood opposite each other in tense confrontation. The ruthless smile of the thug met the unyielding, determined gaze of Iris. Looking at her friend, Arya sighed simultaneously with relief and irritation, because this was Iris's usual heroic recklessness. A moment later, she felt a familiar presence nearby and realized that their teacher was also approaching. In the nearby clearing, the performer Adelgratz addressed his leader Fismeden and resolutely declared that he would handle the immediate threat himself, entrusting the Alta White's matter to Fis. He even sternly warns that Fis does not need any extra help at all. The unflappable Fis simply closes his eyes and quietly wishes luck. The plan is ready. Adelgratz throws himself into battle again. Iris calls Arya, and the huge Punisher brings down his curved blade, a blurred flash of movement right on target. The attack was intercepted, but suddenly a voice cut through the tension. Alta shouted from somewhere nearby to his comrade to retreat and regroup, but immediately a deeper voice interrupted him and addressed the Sword Princess directly. Long time no see, Iris Ryan fell, and Iris's eyes widened in recognition. The voice belongs to Adelgratz, who now stands before the bewildered Arya Natria. She can only utter a sound of surprise, looking up at this formidable figure. Her surprise gives way to growing horror. She finally recognizes the man's voice, and the memory of his presence pierces her with cold. The enforcer pays no attention to Arya. All his eyes are fixed on Iris. He notes her new title, Holy Sword Princess, and bitterly asks, "Have you managed to surpass your father?" His words hit a sore spot. Iris loses her composure. Shock freezes on her face as the memory of their brutal clash floods her mind. The screech of metal on metal, the stunning force of his blow. While Iris remained stunned, a burst of dark energy erupted not from her but from Arya. Her face twisted from surprise into a mask of pure rage. A complex, crackling symbol appeared before her, and with eyes full of anger and disbelief, she accused Adelgratz he killed her father. In the forest clearing, the confrontation with the enforcer Kinkakashu boils over. As the Holy Sword Princess, Iris Rinfell begins to radiate a powerful aura, and nearby her friend Arya crouches and desperately shouts for her to calm down. Ere in vain, Arya looks with wide-open eyes, realizing it is in vain. Iris breaks free, energy crackles around her, and her face distorts with pure rage. The layers of the massive warrior who declared she must avenge her father, Kata Grinsa, noting the impressive strength within herself, and he smiled and said he was sure she would entertain well. In response to his mockery, a stream of dark energy burst from her, wildly swirling around her fragile figure, and Arya could only laugh and shout her name. The furious surge of power proved too strong, and Iris was violently thrown back through the trees with a scream of pain, while from afar Alta Schweitz watched the chaos with a keen, focused gaze. Iris lies on the ground, her rage seemingly subsided. Arya looks on anxiously, and Iris turns her head, her face softened, and she calls her teacher, Sh White Sensei. She turns back to her friend, apologizes to Arya for getting so upset, and assures her that everything is fine now. Gathering herself, she looks the giant thug in the eyes again and firmly says she is not trying to entertain him. He looks visibly disappointed, wipes his mouth, and says she is becoming boring. His gaze burns with fury as the young man in the cloak calls the Kinkakusha leader by name. Fist calmly responds to the call from afar. The answer came from behind a huge, shimmering energy grid, a thread barrier that suddenly appeared and separated the students from their pursuers. It stands before the shining grate and with fearless confidence explains, "This is a barrier that no one has ever broken through. One touch, it warns, and death is inevitable." They turn their attention to the boy and laugh scornfully at the idea that a simple wall of threads could stop them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the clearing, Adelgratz notices Iris and Arya. He regrets having to give up the boy he had been so eager to fight, and now demands that these two girls entertain him for at least a moment. In response, Iris's sword sparkled and seemed to come alive. Purple arcs of lightning burst from it. She declares that she swears by this sword, the one her father left her, Gallo Rainfell. The executor's eyes widened slightly. He recognizes this weapon. Her determination hardened, and she firmly said that as the princess of the Holy Sword, she alone would defeat him. The huge warrior smiled mockingly, accepted her challenge, and called her forward. Standing by the barrier, Fist watches as the clash begins. A cruel smile plays on their lips, and they quietly whisper to the boy nearby that two girls will die. Sword held ready shouted towards the distant leader Kinkakusha, decisively declaring that he would defeat her, saying that since Iris had already called herself Sword Princess, he leaves this matter to her, and Iris on the other side of the barrier blushed awkwardly and whispered for him not to use that title. His words drew a cold retort from the shadowy figure. She called him a heartless boy and seemed disappointed. She said she had hoped he would be more upset about it, but all it caused was nausea. Stepping into the light, she reveals her true form, a formidable warrior with long white hair and dark skin in exquisite battle armor. She calls herself Fist Meeden, a member of the Sword Gang, and officially announces the start of their fight to the death. Without saying a word, she unleashed a barrage of slashing strikes that tore through the air and rushed across the distance between them. Watch as the pressure approaches. His gaze is focused and analytical, preparing to observe the reaction and nature of her power. The attack hits him instantly. A hail of seemingly invisible blades tears the ground beneath his feet. While the invisible assault continues, he suddenly realizes that Fist is not holding a sword for this attack. She does not need a sword at all to defend or strike. In response, a faint light begins to flicker at the tip of his finger as he prepares to manifest his own power against the relentless barrage. She weaves through the storm of invisible attacks, and the ground explodes where he stood just a moment ago. Fist Meeden rapidly closes the distance, her movements blurred. She presses the assault. Her pressure stops with a quiet laugh. She asks if he is praising her and calls him a good boy. and he looks at her intently, noticing that her reaction is so incredible, as if she can foresee the future. He quickly sharpens his analysis. This is not just prediction. Her abilities are a completely different level, a sixth sense that outpaces an ordinary person by light years. His eyes narrow as realization flashes in him. Despite her supernatural sensitivity, he sees a critical weakness. She sees absolutely nothing. She felt that he noticed this and quietly confirmed he noticed. During their first meeting, it turned out that she was once revered as a saint but was tortured, and since then she has been blind. He adds that for Iris, bearing the title Princess of the Holy Sword is probably very difficult. She then resolutely declares that she intends to free Iris from that role, and he immediately challenges her and asks again, does she mean freedom as in killing her? A painful smile crosses her face. She thinks that maybe someday the fights will end, but only if they continue to free one by one those who want to fight themselves. His face freezes in icy certainty, and he firmly tells her that, as he suspected, her group is truly vile, then decisively adds that he will kill her and that girl too. He instantly bursts into action, weaving through a storm of dark, blade-sharp projectiles bursting from the ground, barely avoiding being pierced. The attack subsides, and a cloud of dust and debris slowly settles over the shattered courtyard. From the mist, Fiskmaden, full of surprise and admiration, says that his ability to disappear without leaving a trace is truly amazing. His senses scan the area, and he understands. He moves without even breathing, an incredible display of self-control. Her sixth sense seems to outline the space around her, and with growing interest she notices that he emits no murderous intent at all. She sincerely admits that she is truly impressed that girl used to be able to make herself invisible, and she says he is even better. At that moment of reflection, he closes the distance and stands right in front of her. Shocked by his sudden closeness, she exclaims, "Who are you?" He is silent, in his head only one principle: now everything depends on speed. He attacks with dazzling speed. His blade flashes past the mutant fist's defenses. She groans, her body twists, the attack hits faster than her prediction can comprehend it. The blade plunged deep, blood gushed from the cut on her shoulder, and Fistmaiden let out a sharp, painful laugh, standing before her with a soulless expression and saying that he is just a simple notch. The blow threw her back and she fell onto the stone floor. Clutching the wound, she raised her eyes with a defiant half-smile and mocked that he did not finish her off. Lying on the floor, she fights back. A huge, shadowy hand emerges and rushes through the hall, aimed straight at him. He tenses, gripping the sword tightly with both hands. It occurs to him, if he takes this blow seriously, his blade will not survive the collision. He tears forward, plunging the sword into the very heart of the shadow construct, and a huge dark energy scatters around the blade as he relentlessly advances. Stunned by his wild strength, she coughs up blood upon the clash of fists and looks in disbelief, her mind spinning at the thought that he is just a child yet has such incredible power. Raising her eyes to the boy standing over her among the debris, she suddenly realized, this is not a knight, this is something entirely different, Krivi. He stands unshakably, his hand resting on the sword, blood running down his cheek. Before him, the defeated figure turns and flees into the depths of the forest, her sharp footsteps echoing retreat, and he quietly watches her retreat with determination. One thought pierces his mind. Only one remains. With a wheeze, Hulk and Kinkakushu, he himself tightens her braces. His own weapon clashed with a shining, crackling blade in a shower of sparks. Standing from afar, the main hero instantly recognizes the weapon. It is the Purple Lightning, a sword once owned by the late Gallo Rainfell. He recalls its unique properties. Forged from ore, which generates powerful electric discharges, and only those strong enough to withstand such current can wield it. Electric energy serves a completely different purpose. It enhances the physical capabilities of the one who uses it. On the battlefield, Iris Rainfall stands firm, her body pierced by the power of the sword, and she faces her massive opponent on the side of Arya. She rushes forward, her blade a shining arc of energy that strikes the guard's weapon with stunning force. Sudden rage caught him off guard, surprise flashed across his face. Iris, however, remains fully focused on the fight. She smoothly breaks in, joining the attack. Together they press, their swords raining a coordinated lightning-fast barrage on his defense. Holding back their blows, the enforcer smiles, praising them for their coordination, but Iris only looks coldly and resolutely into his eyes. She and Arya surged forward with a single battle cry as the massive Punisher swung his heavy blade downward to bring it down on them. A shockwave swept from the clash, the very ground beneath them cracked. Arya parried the attack, and Iris prepared her electrified strike. The dust settled, the Punisher stood panting amid the shattered earth, and Iris looked at him and suddenly realized their moment had already passed. He looked at her, the sword still quietly crackling with energy, and said he missed the figure in lightning he once knew, comparing her to her father. Iris's eyes widened and she directly asked, was he sent to kill her father? He categorically denied the accusation and calmly explained, her father was merely an obstacle to him, because in reality he was interested in someone else, a man considered the strongest in the kingdom of Galadia. Hearing this, Iris immediately understood everything. She assessed his strength and quietly decided to herself that although his blows were incredibly powerful, they were not insurmountable. She could fight him. With renewed determination, she called Arya and suggested attacking together. Arya met her gaze, her face hardened in silent agreement. Their opponent, however, almost smiled. He honestly admitted that their performance was better than he expected and threw down a challenge, hold on for another minute. The adversary stomped his foot, the ground cracked under the blow, and a wave of power surged from him. He announced that now it was his turn. Iris and Arya froze, holding their breath as a huge pressure from the performer bore down on them. He rushed forward with incredible speed. Iris instantly stepped forward to meet him, shouted to Arya, "Stand behind me," and deflected his heavy blade with hers. She struggled under his irresistible strength, gritting her teeth while the guard mocked her, saying she didn't even last 10 seconds. Suddenly he broke free and rushed past her, his true target revealed. Iris screamed in fright, shouting the name of the locality. When he lunged at her, Arya did not retreat. Her face hardened with determination. She vowed not to let him pass. She met his attack head-on. A blinding flash of light exploded between them. The force of the blow stunned even the massive guard. Arya was thrown back, coughing blood, her defense shattered. Her body hit the ground hard. Iris froze in horror and screamed her friend's name when she saw Arya wounded, and where the barrier once stood, a web of cracks hung in the air. She stands firm in place, sword at the ready, when the performer Kinkakashu addresses her directly, calling her sword-sent princess and saying they have finally met face to face. Watching him, she is stunned by the sheer evil of his magical power. He transforms and undermines her. She realizes that a fight where she only dodges is lost, but if she can hold the defense and prolong the clash, there is a chance. Before she could fully form a strategy, he exploded into motion wrapped in dark energy. The Punisher races across the ground, erasing the space around, and Arya, standing below, realizes with horror that he is heading straight for Iris. Having no time to dodge, she decides to meet the attack head-on. She plants her feet firmly on the ground and raises her sword at the very moment when the huge, energy-charged blade of the Punisher crashes into her own. The clash erupts with a fierce flash of dark power, shards flying into the air, and Iris, through the crushing force of the blow, scrolls herself, her delicate figure seeming tiny against the vastness of the attack. But it does not break. Its blade hums, shining with dazzling light that repels the advancing darkness, and her face is a mask of concentrated fear. The flow of energy finally subsides. Iris falls to her knee, gasping, but she withstood the attack. The enforcer looks at her, and there is a hint of approval in his voice as he notes that she took the blow flawlessly. He snorted and added that this very trait is what makes her and her father so foolish. They always choose to protect others, paying too high a price for it. She let out a low, mocking laugh, completely unimpressed by her determination, remaining in a defensive stance and breathing heavily. Her face turned to stone, her eyes blazed with confidence. Though cuts and sweat stained her skin, she declared that if her actions mirrored those of her parents, then she had done nothing wrong. He brushed off her words as nonsense. The Punisher declared that he did not need to understand her reasoning. She simply had to go and suffer the same fate as her father. She felt her strength melting away and understood. She might not withstand another such blow, but there was no other choice. She had to keep going. Energy sparkled again around her blade. Her sword gleamed and she roared a challenge for him to come at her. In response, the performer lunged forward, his massive blade looming, ready to strike. Two warriors clashed in a fierce explosion of power. Their blades collided with dazzling speed. Steel screeched against steel, the blow sent shock waves through the air. Blades clashed, the enforcers' faces twisted with effort, and Iris, straining every muscle, restrained his overwhelming power with all her might. Her strength faltered and she retreated under the performer's stunning force. Just as her defense was about to break, a figure in dark clothing flashed by and deflected the heavy blade with a sharp clang of steel. The performer only reacted stunned. The rookie dug his feet into the ground and became a shield before the exhausted Iris. With his sword ready, he became the new line of defense against their enemy. He glanced over his shoulder, a blood stain on his cheek, and quietly apologized for being late. Behind him, Iris lifted her head and recognized with relief White Sensei. Relief spread in her eyes. She looked at her protector and assured him that everything was fine. His gaze hardened as he met the Punisher's eyes again. The old warrior looked back grimly and suddenly realized, if they were all here, it meant the fist was dead. But the enforcer understood that he was the last one left standing amid the devastated landscape, and all this was just to confirm the fact with a single word. On the battlefield, still fresh from the recent confrontation, the formidable Punisher Kinkakushu Adelgrat stands against the young Alta. The ground between them is torn as if by thunder, proof of the unleashed power, and in the background, the students Alta came to protect are scattered but have recovered. Alta notices the fallen Arya, though blood is on his cheek. A faint smile plays on his face and he praises her, telling the unconscious girl that she did well and gave everything to protect Iris. Praise. Iris looks over her shoulder, her face dirty and tired, quietly whispering to herself that Arya was truly reliable, and Alta picks up on this, noting how much she could be counted on. She asks about Arya's condition. Iris, holding her friend close, replies that she is alive but unconscious, then apologizes and admits she should have handled it herself. But Alta rejects her apology and insists that she also did her part, protected Arya, and survived that ordeal. His expression hardens, his gaze becomes sharp and focused. He looks at the opponent and says to Iris, "Leave the rest to me." A resolute statement made Iris drop to her knees, bowing her head in shame. She lamented that she had failed again. If the sensei had not come, she would have been lost, a complete failure, even though she called herself the Holy Princess of the Sword. While she struggles with feelings of inadequacy, Alta silently stands with his back to her, gazing into the ruins spread out before them. After a moment, he turns to meet the gaze of the kneeling Iris. He tells her that he will promise one thing, starting by confessing. At first, he thought that being a teacher or a sword master was not his path. At that very moment, he swore to defeat a certain man at any cost, drew his sword, and loudly declared that he was the strongest knight in the entire country. Then explain what his claim to the status of Princess of the Sword leads to. As long as he serves as her knight, she will not be able to achieve her goal to become the strongest in the country. He continued, saying that this was exactly why she needed him. Someday she would understand what it truly means to be the strongest princess, the Holy Sword, but for now he was the only one who could protect her, and he asked her to rely on him. Her eyes widened as she looked up at him. The traces of the recent battle were still visible on her face. She could only whisper his name. At that moment it dawned on her. Since her father died, she believed she could rely on no one, neither her mother nor even Arya. Now, when she could finally allow herself to express her feelings, she wanted it to last forever from that moment on. Tears rolled down her face as she finally pleaded aloud, "Sensei, please save us." He responded with a gentle smile, placed a comforting hand on her head, and said that of course he was her guardian and instructor. The huge guardian Adelgratz nodded, acknowledging the boy's impeccable stance. Adele ordered him to raise his sword, but all this was just to ask if the boy had made him wait. He assured that he was not boasting, emphasizing that Adele could attack at any moment. The enforcer smiled and admitted that he himself trembled with anticipation of the upcoming battle. With a tired expression, he noted that they were all true crazy battle fans. Adele's smile widened as he eagerly declared that he was eager to fight the one considered the strongest knight. The thug rushed forward with incredible speed, proclaiming that this wild aggression was the very essence of the sword gang. Alta tensed, feeling the immense magical power hidden behind this surge. Adel unleashed a flurry of strikes, a technique he recognized as the Sword Saint's move, but as the attack descended, someone calmly said they had already seen it. The confident advance of the enforcer met unexpected defense. His powerful blows were reflected, and he groaned from effort and surprise. If you saw the chaotic result of the parry, you understood that a direct confrontation between them would indeed be dangerous. The force of the counterattack threw Adele backward through the air. The Punisher found himself in the whirl of his own reflected power, while Alta stood firmly with an outstretched hand, as if he had orchestrated the entire counter-maneuver. Caught in the explosion of his own reflected power, Adelgratz roars a challenge, refusing to be underestimated. His resistance met a dazzling flash. The magical energy exploded and completely engulfed him. The force of the explosion rolled through the room. Iris, with anxiety on her face, calls the name of her teacher as Adele emerges from the smoke, roaring with fury. Alta instantly assessed the situation. He realized that if the effect of the blue sword passed through, he could extinguish the magical explosion, so the only way out was to demolish the nearest wall. Without hesitation for a moment, he turns and rushes to the stone obstacle, holding his sword at the ready. The adult, still confused, can only watch as he bursts forward. When Arya screams his name in horror, Alta shatters the stone wall with a powerful blow, opening a path of escape into the darkness beyond. He rushes through the freshly made hole and falls into the void below, while debris swirls around him. He gracefully lands in a wide channel lined with stone, realizing he has found himself in underground waterways and sighs with relief this is not a sewer. He landed on a stone platform in the darkness of the underground watercourse, and debris from his escape was collapsing around. His eyes darted around, adjusting to the gloom of the underground cave. Sword at the ready, he grimly and satisfiedly noted that they would not be interrupted here. But a voice from the shadows sharply addressed him and accused him, saying that he was the one who broke the band of swordsmen organized by that voice. From the darkness rose the giant silhouette of Adelgratz. He said the assigned task could wait. In reality, he wanted only one thing: to fight Alta. A huge warrior loomed over him, his presence unbearable. At that moment, Alta suddenly understood everything. This man was the same as he had been in his past lives. Thoughts carried him to that past life when he stood as an incomparable saint. He remembered endless daily battles, the ascent to a lonely peak, where in the end he found no one stronger than himself. He desired only one thing: to become strong, but having gained it, he ended up with nothing, and losing the reasons to fight simply stopped. He wanted to live this new life simply to quickly earn some money and finally break free from the endless spiral of battles. But now his priorities had changed. He caught himself thinking about how far Iris would go, how much she would grow. He wanted to witness this journey, and if his opponent insisted on stopping him. He went into battle, sword clenched in hand, gaze fixed on the warrior opposite, and a new determination ignited in his heart. The man he had become now had something to fight for. With a rumble that shook the ground, a huge figure landed amid the ruins. A muscular man with white hair and a beard, sharply contrasting against his dark clothing, calls himself Adelgratz from the Sword Gang, looks down arrogantly at the little boy before him, Alta Shwites, and swears to kill him with all his might. Unfazed by the threat, the boy raised his eyes with a firm gaze and, realizing they were alone and no one was watching, accepted the challenge and resolutely said he would respond to the man with the same declaration of intent. Defiance, fear, Adelgratz, and he lets out a surprised wheeze. The boy does not back down, sword ready in hand, a silent testament to his resolve. He calls upon power, utters the words instant challenge. Suddenly a dazzling light flashes before him, and from it, as if from thin air, a majestic long sword materializes. The sudden appearance of the weapon caught his attention. He widened his eyes, fixing his gaze on the silvery gleaming blade hanging in the air. He grips the hilt of the summoned weapon, its glow illuminating his face. He names the blade Mystic Silver, the very sword that belonged to the Sword Saint Raoul Isle. During the Sword Saint's title sequence, a sharp jolt passed through Adele. He watches as the boy clenches the legendary weapon in his hands. The consequences of its appearance hung heavily in the air. His face darkens with suspicion. If this is truly the Sword Saint's blade, he insists on knowing why the boy has it. Alta calmly replies that it's simple, it is his sword. Such an answer only fuels Adel's rage, and he growls, demanding to know what the boy has done. In response to the enforcer's fury, Alta Shwites raises the shining blade Mystic Silver and declares, "Since I promised to win, I will fight with all my strength to claim the title of Sword Saint." The sword is pointed directly at the opponent. A drop of blood trickled from his lips. With an unwavering gaze he challenged, "Come, Adelgratz, I will send you to death." It was said not out of malice, but rather like a deep, loud laugh echoing in the ruins. Adelgratz throws his head back, completely captivated by the boy's audacity. He snorted in disdain. How could this boy be some kind of saint? Adele thinks that if the legendary Rurali South were still alive, he would already be over 60, so what the boy says is impossible. His doubt was answered calmly, almost apologetically. Alta says that Raoul I South died 15 years ago, and this news completely caught Adele by surprise. The revelation made Adele fall silent for a moment, but he brushed off the thought and decided that the truth no longer mattered, only the fight was important. He said he would just enjoy the moment and rushed forward to attack. The attack reaches its climax with a fierce blow, which everyone meets head-on, and the clash of their blades explodes in a dazzling wave of power. The shockwave threw Adelbach back, his eyes wide open in disbelief. He noted that Alta's parry was impressive, but his own sword should have hit right into the magical explosion. Alta calmly explained that there was nothing to be surprised about, he simply cut the magic itself. He gives the opponent no time to recover. Sword raised high, he lunges forward, swinging in a wide, powerful arc. Enforcer Adelgratz clicks his tongue in irritation, preparing for the strike. The initial swing is a deceptive maneuver. He smoothly guides the blade, intricately slicing the air in a dizzying pattern of light and steel. In response, Adele releases a stream of wild power, fierce, crackling light bursts from his body. The boy abruptly stops the advance, realizing what kind of defense this is. It works like explosive armor, and as long as the one who activated it keeps it on, it is hard to even touch him. Unfazed, he thrusts the sword forward, and the tip of the blade touches the crackling energy field. A sharp metallic ring is heard. He presses harder, but the protective aura holds firm, repelling his blade with a dull, bony thud. Pressure becomes unbearable. Adele groans dully as the point of contact of the sword and its aura explodes in a blinding flash. The explosion raises a giant cloud of dust and debris. The smoke is just beginning to settle, and the young swordsman is already on guard. His blade is still aimed at the very heart of the explosion. When the dust settled after the explosion, he saw Adele Gratz standing firm, breathing heavily but impressed. The senior warrior said it was amazing, admitting that even using all his strength, he could not land a single blow. He continued to praise, his voice full of sincere admiration. He said that Alta Schweitzer's abilities were so incredible that they almost made him believe in reincarnation. Everyone noted that the warrior truly glowed with happiness. Adel confirmed this without hesitation. He explained his long-standing desire to fight the strongest person in the world with the sword-scent roll. Smiling sharply and confidently, he admitted that Alta was truly a sword saint, but immediately boldly claimed that he himself was stronger. When he began to boast about his magical power, the words stuck in his throat. A look of embarrassment flashed across his face as he felt his energy mysteriously begin to fade. The cause of the energy leak instantly became obvious. Alta's sword pulsed with dazzling light and actively sucked magical energy from the air around. Looking at his opponents, Alta, the dwindling aura calmly confirmed what the warriors silently thought, and asked if Adele had only just noticed that his weapon was absorbing magical power. And then he revealed the true nature of his blade. It was forged from collate, a special material that has the property of absorbing all magical energy around. He stood unwavering in the radiant circle created by his sword, and calmly informed the enemy that he no longer had any magical power left. Adelgratz began to question the nature of the ring, so Alta explained why it was so important. In his past life, it was an arena for duels, a place where conflicts were resolved not by magic but by pure skill and physical strength. He said that the circle is the exact range of his sword's effect, where he draws magic. With his blade, he defeated everyone who ever stood in his way, and noted that although Adele might have heard of the legendary silver sword, he clearly did not know its true, hidden power. Adelgratz dismissed this tactic as nonsense, admitting that it might work for the legendary Raleigh South, but now Alta is just a child, and he mockingly asked how he could possibly win a physical duel with him, even with magical enhancements. After a minute of thought, he agreed with the guys. If there is even a tiny chance of Alta's victory, everything must be decided immediately right here, within the duel ring. Enforcer Kinkakushu let out a deafening roar. His body sparkled with power. He tensed, preparing for the next exchange of blows. Facing this immense power, Alta does not retreat. The sword is drawn, and with grim concentration he realizes he has not yet absorbed all of the opponent's magic. Plates clashed in a dazzling flash of light and a deafening rumble. The strike sent shock waves through the air. The fighters locked in a clash of pure strength. Steel screeches against steel, and magical energy bursts from the point of contact. Forced to scream from the effort, Alta feels the last fragments of his strength flowing into his blade. He finally did it. Gasping, the effort of absorption and the prolonged fight exhaust him, but his eyes are still fixed on the target. The opponent is now weakened, and he notices a gap. Dodging a desperate counterswing, he rushes forward and thrusts the sword cleanly into the enforcer's chest. The big man's eyes widen in disbelief. Sweat streams down his face. He breathes heavily, unable to comprehend what just happened, only left to guess how. The enforcer from Kinkakushu staggers from the previous blow, stunned by the opponent's power. He cannot understand how the thin-statured boy can match his strength, and suspects that he is still enhancing his body with magic. He recalls how long he searched for someone stronger than himself, a search born from a complete loss of faith in his native country. Now he sees what that desperate foolishness was. He fully grasps the essence. If he lowers his guard even for a second, they will tear him to pieces, but instead of fear, a maniacal smile blooms on his face. He feels incredible luck to have encountered such a worthy opponent, realizes he is dealing with a true sword saint, and with new determination declares that he will kill this boy. If you accept this thrilling revelation, he lets out a fierce roar, a challenge to fight until one of them reaches the absolute peak. The weapons clashed with a deafening crash. The strike sent waves through the air, sparks flew from the grinding steel. Blow through the thug backward, he coughs, spitting blood, breathing heavily, but through the pain admits to the boy that he enjoys fighting a true swordsman. His face contorts into a mask of pure, bloody determination. He shouts that he doesn't care if he dies, he will defeat the opponent at any cost. The boy with a drop of blood at the corner of his mouth calmly watches the Punisher's furious rage and sees not strength in it, but a mad obsession, the inevitable end of those who blindly chase power. He holds the sword forward, the blade now shines with a dazzling white light. He tells the opponent that this is the least he can do and asks to accept it as a sign of gratitude. Kinkakushu met her gaze, his face became a mask of distrust and confusion. Drops of sweat ran down his forehead as he struggled to comprehend what was happening before him and wondered if it was some kind of magic. He reveals the secret of his weapon. The Silver Spirit Sword accumulates magical power exactly as much as the number of people he has defeated. He recalls that in his past life he never used this ability because he believed only in victory through sword mastery, but now he is different. His resolve has hardened and he declares that he will now use part of the accumulated power. The motivation is clear. A girl awaits him above. From the tip of his blade burst a colossal wave of pure white energy, rushing forward and completely engulfing the Punisher, who only stood frozen in stunned silence. A ray of light tears through the landscape, a catastrophic force that erases everything in its path. When the light finally settled, only a huge, smoking chasm remained, and from afar Iris Reinfell stands and cannot believe the scale of the destruction. She turns to Arya and Natria, who are kneeling nearby, and Iris asks aloud if that incredible power belonged to their teacher. Arya, also stunned, says she doesn't know, but the fight is probably over. Iris sits on the ground tending to her wounds. Arya and the young girl Natria watch nearby. Arya asks Iris to stay back because of her injuries, but Natria smiles and says Iris is too stubborn to listen. Iris apologizes for her recklessness, and Arya jokingly accepts the apology on the condition that Iris buys her dessert. Her face is frozen in determination. She has already decided. She will wait and believe in him. She tightly grips the sword, its power crackles around her palm. If Adelgratz returns, she decides to face him alone. Seeing the unbreakable resolve of her friends, her own determination strengthens. Together they will see this through to the end. Sudden rumble nearby, the structure shakes them, and they both turn toward the source of the sound. From a hole in the ground emerges Alta, waits and suddenly realizes that the underground ladder led him right here. Sudden appearance makes Iris push back in shock and simultaneous relief, and Arya exclaims his name in astonishment. She, almost whispering, tells the exhausted students that they don't need to get up. Arya, whose face is a mix of hope and anxiety, instantly asks if he won. He smiles, a dark wound mars his cheek, and without hesitation confirms his victory. Of course, he says. His words are emphasized by the view of the ruined, crater-strewn land beneath them, a silent testimony that he kept his promise. His indifferent confirmation confused Iris. She thought that only her teacher could so simply declare this victory, and gathering herself, she addressed him, hesitating. So, I wanted to tell you something. She sincerely and deeply thanks him, her cheek reddening as she speaks, and she is sure that her father would also be very grateful for what he did. He waved off her thanks as if to say no need, and added that her father should be glad at how she has grown. Iris Sam. His praise left Iris speechless. She blushed, and Arya could not help but notice. Watching her friend, Arya raises a small finger and admits that when they first met, she really wanted to fight him, insisting that with her magic she could by no means lose to her teacher. Then everything sinks into memory. Images of Iris and Altasparin emerge, and Iris continues the thought, confessing that the truth was clear from the very first time their blades crossed. Her face, smeared with dirt after the battle, softens and is covered with a barely noticeable blush. She thinks that her teacher will always be there. The thought fades in quiet admiration. Suddenly Alta interrupts Februara, addressing both her and Arya at once. He says he will call the knights to take care of their treatment, adds that he must investigate something and will be away briefly. Both girls quietly nod. He returns and walks alone into the foggy forest, his thoughts already on the next task. He knows that it is far from over. Another enemy lies ahead that must be dealt with. As he disappears into the thicket, the last thought flashes through his mind, but dealing with that last threat is no longer his concern. In the luxurious hall, Prince Zeal Tillich trembles in his elegant chair. He has just been brought news. The band of swordsmen has been completely wiped out, and their target, Iris Reinfeld, remains unharmed. His rage bursts out, he slaps the glass on the table, liquid splashes, and he growls at the subordinate, a silent figure in a dark hood and mask, demanding, how could it be so hard to kill a mere 15-year-old girl? He continues the tirade, pointing an accusing finger, reminding the masked person of the crazy money he pays them, and wonders how a 12-year-old brat can ruin their entire operation. He declared with disgust that he hates incompetent people. In response, the masked man calmly asked if he was asking whether they themselves were ready to take on this case. And in the silence after the unexpected question, Zeal just froze, staring at the mask before him, which suddenly cracked and fell off, revealing not the face he expected, but a sharp-eyed young woman who calmly asked him to repeat what he had just said. This is the darkness of overconfidence. She leans forward slightly, as if hinting to the prince that he should at least know the true nature of the people he is dealing with. She raises a small round device and addresses him directly, Zeal Tiliksama. Lamur Owen announces that they have recorded his full confession. He hired a gang of swordsmen to carry out the murder. She watches as Prince Zeal's face twists in disbelief, eyes wide open, and he shouts her name. She calmly pulls out a noticeable mask and explains that it was found by a talented 12-year-old subordinate of the Swords gang member Fismeeden, and this very mask explains why she ended up in this room. The princess recorded her confession on this physical evidence. She says this should be more than enough to firmly tie all suspicions against. The prince's shock melted into a contemptuous smile. Can any knight commander really scare the king's son? He brushed her off like a wounded opponent, seeing no threat in her, drew his sword and demanded the evidence, promising to come up with an excuse for her death. He lunges forward, roaring that he will not let her stand in his way, but his path is suddenly blocked by Alta's swift intervention. With a sharp clash of steel, he easily parries the princess's blade, sending it upward and momentarily leaving Zeal stunned. He presses his advantage, locking blades with Prince. Alta calmly tells him that he places too much trust in his skills and in his influence and in his swordsmanship. Later, in the strict headquarters of the Black Knights, Alta sits at her desk and unexpectedly finds administrative work a refreshing change of pace. He stands in a well-furnished office, dressed in a formal dark knight uniform, mentally noting that a lot of time has passed since he last wore this uniform. Opposite him, Lamur Owen, satisfied, congratulates him on another successful mission, and now that Prince Zeal is securely in custody, thinks that those who died during the operation can finally receive proper recognition. He bitterly notes that her workload seems to have only increased. Lamur confirmed they were flooded with questions because of that recent disaster, and they still need to find out who let the killer into the palace. He honestly admitted that they have problems by the dozen. He smiles happily, says he has already counted his earnings and eagerly awaits his special bonus. Lamur notes that he is greedy as always, but he just laughs and hints that the real difficulties are only beginning. Walking down the corridor, Lamur asked if he regretted the time spent with the instructor. When the matter ended, he abruptly switched and asked if they were going to discuss the new mission, but she noted that this was not exactly the purpose of their walk. He answers the previous question and admits that teaching turned out to be quite pleasant, but insists that his main role is a knight and he will prioritize these duties. He adds that he can still fulfill Iris's promise without being an official mentor, and with a determined look proclaims his true dream to earn enough to live peacefully as a recluse in a village. This confession completely confuses Lamur. Exclaims that the dream of being a recluse is not at all suitable for a 12-year-old. Recovering, she suggests discussing it later at the bar and also talking about the new mission. On the street, the chime of the city's clock tower rang out, its sound echoing through the streets. At the Fiora Academy, the sunny courtyard buzzes with lively chatter of students, and among them Arya, no Tria, laughs joyfully, waving to an invisible acquaintance, walking with classmates as if normal life had returned to the campus again. But all eyes soon focus on Iris. Reinfeldt stands alone by the stone parapet and quietly looks into the distance. Arya, like a true friend, approaches, calls her by name, and anxiously asks about the state of her wounds. She turns around and smiles gently, as if saying, "Don't worry, there is a bandage on her cheek, her hand is bandaged." Iris insists that everything is fine and thanks for the concern. When the friends part ways, a familiar voice sounds behind. Alta notices that she still has a bandage after the recent trial. Then he makes a formal bow and sincerely says that it is an honor for him to be asked to be a personal escort, but it is clear that he doubts whether he said it correctly. At his words, her cheeks flushed. She remembered how he had earlier promised that he could be relied upon, and his solemn words completely caught her by surprise. Now they were left alone on the balcony. She listens as he tells her The commander reported that the Black Order has a serious shortage of people, so his new duty is to stay at the academy near her, except for occasionally going on night missions. Iris lowers her eyes, anxiety is visible on her face. She asks if she is just a burden to him. Alta immediately rejects this and insists that she can count on him. Noticeably relieved, Iris quietly accepts his assurance. She blushed and became embarrassed when Alta cheerfully remarked that she is also a student and essentially still a child, and he couldn't help but chuckle at her reaction. He listened as Iris declared that she wants to become a swordswoman like him. Although he did not quite understand, he was glad that she had a goal. With new determination, she promised to fulfill her father's will, become a knight, and someday surpass him, and he quietly expressed hope that she would succeed. She officially addressed him by his position, First Officer Alta Schweitz, and asked him to become her guardian. He firmly shook her hand and gladly accepted the task. The moment was suddenly interrupted by a stunned Arya, who apparently had witnessed the entire conversation. Iris, confused, shouted her friend's name. Iris immediately asked Alta if he was going to pretend to be an instructor again, and he calmly replied that they could spar after classes, and this seemed to irritate Iris. She blushed and insisted. If he was going to fight seriously, then let it be with her. He mentally understood that his life at the academy would become much more complicated again. Arya quickly noted that she was the one who asked him first. He smiled to himself, thinking that this was the life he could not have even dreamed of in his previous existence. And so he officially became the guardian of Iris, the princess, the holy sword. He did not know how much longer he could stay by her side, but he decided to protect her as long as he could. He looked at them with a quiet smile. Iris stood straight, her face glowing with determination. Arya held her hand and looked with her in hope, and a new goal appeared in his heart: to protect and support her until she became the strongest knight defending this country.